Burglars. What are the best ways to keep you out of our houses? If you're in a very student-y area of UK cities, when you order a taxi, get it from a slightly different address, like a block of flats with lots of lights on, or a house you know has no one living in it, and be waiting outside, or better yet, get it from outside a supermarket or pub. In my city, certain cab drivers are in cahoots with burglars and let them know when a house is empty for most of the night, because the students are out clubbing, even if they leave a light on or something. I live in Liverpool, for everyone asking, which has a lot of break-ins on every road in the student area. And get your frickin' stuff insured. Landlord insurance generally covers the building, but not your possessions. Get an alarm system and use the stickers and signs saying that you have one. I'm more likely to skip a house with an alarm system. Don't make it easy for me. Lock your doors, close your windows, and most importantly, lock them. 95% of the houses I've been in, I just walked through the door or climbed through an open window. Don't leave tools laying around that's going to make my job easier. Ladders, saws, drills, sledgehammers, putty knives. All of these make it easier for me to get into your house. Contrary to popular belief, most dogs aren't a problem. Unless they've been trained to be dog guards, it doesn't take much to make one friendly. And don't advertise. If you just bought an expensive piece of electronic equipment or jewelry or tools, don't brag about it in public, don't leave the trash in sight, and don't post about it on Facebook. Use security hedges under your windows. If your house has rose bushes and your neighbors don't, I'm more likely to try their house first. If it's irreplaceable, don't leave it out in the open. Get a safe for stuff like that, and make sure you bolt it down. I'll happily take a safe with me and open it later. Don't live in a nice neighborhood. When I'm looking to steal, I don't go to the poor neighborhoods. I go to the subdivisions and wealthier areas. Don't assume I'm going to wait until it's dark to rob a place. Between 9 a.m. and noon are the best times to hit. Most everyone's gone to work, and those who aren't are running errands or sleeping. That being said, invest in motion sensor lights. If someone's outside your house at night, this can help. Finally, be suspicious and alert. Is there someone new walking your neighborhood that doesn't live there? Is someone getting yard care or pest control deliveries outside of what's normal for them? Does the same car keep cruising around at different times? You see, I'll study a neighborhood before I strike. Sometimes I'll spend upwards of a month. I'll note times people leave and arrive. I'll note when or if cops patrol certain areas and when. I'll pay attention to the delivery times, mailman times, and various other service people to see when they arrive, what they do, and how they're dressed. I'll watch to see who leaves windows open, who forgets to lock their doors, and so on. It doesn't take much time to make a hit and get away either. On average, I spend 8 minutes in a house, rarely more than that. Thank you to the actual burglars or people who claim to be burglars writing in. If you'd like to supplement your stories with credentials, feel free to leave your names, numbers, and photographs of any stolen items with our agents at your local police station for verification. Well, I don't steal anymore, but I used to a lot. Alarm signs are the biggest deterrent. I'm going in through your front door. I'm not going to check windows or creep into your backyard or any sketchy stuff like that. The neighbors calling the cops is really the only danger. I dress nicely in a collared shirt and slacks. I'm white and clean-cut and fairly good-looking, a bit like a police officer. Your dog is useless. There's too much on the line to worry about, Fido. I've never been attacked by a dog, but if I was… No, I wouldn't want to hurt your dog, but yes, I would have if it attacked me. If you have an 8-foot-tall, fire-breathing dog, then yes, it probably is a good deterrent. Make sure your dog's fire-breathing is on point because none of us wants your dog to get hurt. I look for houses with the least viewpoints from the neighbors. Having an open front porch is your best defense. You should park in your garage. Parking in front of the garage is a telltale sign that there's likely no other car moving in and out of the garage, and the driver is likely at work. I can tell because of the discoloration. Pick up your newspapers. Stop your mail and newspaper if you're leaving town. If I pop the door and an alarm goes off, I'll probably leave. Make friends with your neighbors so they know who should be at your house. Going in and someone being home is terrifying. I don't want to hurt anybody, and I certainly don't want to get shot. Also, the risk for getting caught just went from 3 years to 25. I will run screaming from the frailest old lady. Again, this isn't me anymore, but perhaps it gives you some insight. Stay safe. I see some guys in here saying to have a robust door. I've never been stopped by a door. It's very easy to kick one in, and I would carry a flat bar. A solid core door with heavily reinforced framing might work? Spend big if you want this to be a viable defense, because it likely isn't. You could place a sticker in the window that reads, "Premises protected by Radio Shack." That sign really says that you have nothing worth stealing. If anybody tried to steal my 8-track player, I would try and knock them out with my VCR, and if that didn't work, I'd throw my Walkman at them. These answers come from a post titled Burglars of Reddit. We really are a diverse community, aren't we? Don't post on Facebook that you're not home and how long you'll be out. To elaborate on this, don't post vacation photos to your social media until you're back home. But my coworkers need to see them immediately for the full effect of jealous rage. This one's always confused me. My Facebook posts are set to friends only. I trust my friends. I keep having relatives send me Facebook messages berating me for saying that I'm going to the movies because someone's going to rob me. No, they're not. I spent 1.5 years in prison after being convicted of multiple residential burglaries. I was caught after a mailman called 911 after seeing me go through a window. I had a pretty good run of burglaries from 2007 to 8, and I haven't done any in 7 years, so technology and times have changed since my spree, but here's how I picked my houses. First, I'd generally only go in the daytime during the week. The idea was for the adults to be at work and the kids be at school. 2, I'd try and find a corner house because it would have at least one side with no neighbors. 3, I went in middle-class neighborhoods close to a community college. I live in a large US city and needed an excuse to be in my late 20s walking around with a backpack. I'd stand out too much in wealthy neighborhoods, and poorer neighborhoods often have bars on windows because they expect to be robbed. Middle-class people seem to be careless. I often went in through an unlocked back door. Interestingly enough, I never went in through a front door. I'd always go to the backside because any fences would provide coverage. 4, people think a large dog would be a good deterrent, but I generally avoided those annoying small yapping dogs that never shut up. 5, I often went through a bedroom window, whether it was unlocked or not. I'm committing a major felony. I don't care about a broken window. 6, I usually went to a master bedroom because that's where the good stuff was. Things a homeowner can do besides armed guards around the clock? You can get a dog that doesn't like strangers. I don't care if it's big or small or threatening or friendly. As soon as one dog barks, the whole neighborhood starts barking and announcing a burglar's presence. Cameras. Inside and out. I knew a guy who was caught because he walked by someone's webcam inside their house and ended up on the news. Make the cameras visible. If I see a camera, I'm not just moving on to the next house, I'm going several streets away. A lock-back fence and restricted access to the backyard. That's generally where I broke into the houses from, so it makes sense. I should tell you, your beware of dog and security alarm signs and stickers are completely worthless. I once broke into a house through a doggy door. There was no dog home. 5, try not to have any stools or anything in the backyard. They make climbing through windows easier. You should keep your windows open. Burglars are extremely superstitious and believe that an open window is a sign of a bad omen? I'm sorry, but I have a Mac. It's funny, I was going to post a life pro tip about this subject. The life pro tip: if you're a burglar, talk to children. They'll tell you everything. Example, the other day we were at the store with my 5-year-old. A random woman smiled at her and says, "Hi, aren't you pretty? What's your name?" My daughter then proceeds to rattle off her full name, first, middle, and last, her mummy and daddy's names, what city she lives in, the fact that her older sister just got a new TV and a Nintendo Wii U, and that she's so excited because we're all going to be taking a trip to visit our family in California next month. All in the space of about 30 seconds. She just had so much stuff she was excited to share with her new friend that she couldn't stop talking. Maybe she secretly hates all of you and knew exactly what she was doing. This used to be a TV show, I believe it was called It Takes a Thief, but they had 2 ex-cons rob someone's house and then give that person tips on how they could be better protected. One time they had a cop volunteer to be robbed and he was shocked by how easily the robbers stole his stuff. What about moats? Why is nobody mentioning moats? To all of the many medieval dukes out there writing in with this exact complaint, there haven't been many replies, but speaking from experience, I can tell you that you're better off investing in guards than ditches filled with water. Moats might deter any enemy armies, but a thief will simply walk into a castle under the pretense of doing business alongside other tradesmen and common laborers. Lock your deadbolts. I can't tell you how easy it is to card a boot with the deadbolt unlocked. Might as well leave the door wide open. Confederate flag. It says not only do you own many weapons, but you really want an excuse to use them. If you hear me rattling around your house, you should hide in a closet and jump out to scare me. Rather than shoot you, I would run like a baby, i.e. making brown, waddling away for a few steps before I fall and bash my head on the coffee table. Undressed grandma. That'll scare off anyone. I was once visiting a female friend of mine who lived in a bit of a crappy neighborhood. At the time, I was working construction and swung by after work. I got to the house and took my size 12 work boots off and left them on the front porch. I tend to carry a pair of flip-flops in my bag and changed into those, then we hit a patio for some sunshine beers. I ended up getting my boots at her place and was in no rush to get them back as I had another pair. Now, I don't know how true this is, but she swears that having a pair of big work boots right by her front door made her safer. I'd pretty much forgotten about them as they were on their way out, but she left them right where they were. She had less craziness happening in her front yard, fewer strangers knocking on her door, and she wasn't broken into again at that place. Of course, it could have just been the smell. Cover everything in mayonnaise. I mean everything. The bed, the surfaces, the dog, yourself, everything. Burglars hate mayonnaise. To the legitimate burglars writing in here, I feel I need to tell you something. My brother and one of my friends, completely independently of each other, almost have a fantasy about shooting a burglar. They both have this romantic visualization of them being the good guy hero and burglars being the perfect example of a bad guy that's coming into their house to attack their family. They daydream and plan for this scenario. My brother even has his alarm siren turned off when he's home, so it only rings on his phone and won't scare an intruder away, like he's hunting or something. I just want you to know that these people are out there. If they break into your house, you're getting shot by a guy with a raging hero hard-on. And I frequently hear the same thing. You need to shoot to kill, because if you don't, they'll sue you. It's not worth it. Stay out of other people's houses. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. This article from the Center for Problem-Oriented Policing is not written by a burglar, but it answers the question quite thoroughly. Burglars select targets based on a number of key factors, including the following: familiarity with the target and convenience of the location, like houses near a ready pool of offenders, houses near major thoroughfares, houses on the outskirts of the neighborhoods, houses previously burglarized, or houses near burglarized houses. Then occupancy, houses vacant for extended periods, houses routinely vacant during the day, houses of new residents, houses without dogs. Then there's visibility or surveillability, houses with cover, houses that are secluded, houses with poor lighting, houses on corners, houses with concealing architectural designs. Accessibility, houses easily entered through the side or back doors or windows, houses next to alleys. Vulnerability or security, houses with weakened entry points, houses whose residents are careless about security, houses with few or no security devices, and finally, potential rewards, houses displaying signs of wealth. This is a huge fear of mine, but what do burglars do with pets? I don't even care about my electronics, but don't you dare touch Mr. Mittens. 3 words. Rooftop Korean snipers. I've got a shoddy tripwire trap on every entrance. I've seen a couple of these supposed experts saying your dog is useless. That's bullcrap. If you have a little yappy dog, that makes sense, but my home was broken into several years ago during the middle of the day. I had a lab GSD mix, like a lot of people would say nicest dog ever, would probably kiss you to death, blah blah blah, and I got a call from the cops because someone driving by called the police after seeing a bloody man in a ripped shirt running away from our front door. When I got home, my front door area just inside my house had what looked like a little dried blood on the floor and door. The police said when they arrived the dog was just laying there staring at the door. The police said he barked as they arrived, but quickly and easily calmed down. Nothing was taken, and only a small table by the door where we put our keys and stuff was knocked over. Long story short, the guy brought himself to the hospital and the cops picked him up as he was leaving. We didn't press charges for breaking in or anything, just let the police handle it, and never actually saw the guy, but the police officer told us his cheek was totally torn from the side of his mouth towards his jawline. We figured Pickles did enough justice and our lives would be easier to just move on. Yeah, there's been some back and forth on whether or not a dog is an issue, but this is our first account of an otherwise sweet pooch absolutely wrecking a wannabe thief's day. I guess it depends on the thief's animal handling skills and on the random quirks of personality that the doggo in question has. I grew up with a whole lot of thieving scumbags. Bank robbers, carjackers, you name it. So here are my suggestions in no particular order. Get a big frickin' dog. Very few thieves want to deal with that. If they aren't specifically targeting your house, then they'll move on to the next one. For houses they are targeting, they'll leave poisoned food outside and keep an eye out for that. Don't use window air conditioners. This was by far the most common way to gain access by my friends. Kick in the AC and climb on in. If nothing of value is found, the AC could be taken in for scrap metal. Motion detecting lights. They're a minor annoyance, and they'll scare off the brainless junkies. Visible cameras. They can be fake, though they're so cheap you may as well just spring for real ones. Don't leave your garage door open. Thieves like to drive around nice neighborhoods looking for people who've left their garages open. They love a situation where someone might be mowing their backyard. Quickly hop out the car, run into the garage, grab as many tools as they can, and run. If they bought a truck, they'll be grabbing bigger stuff. You probably won't even notice or know what happened. Make it a royal pain in the butt to get into your backyard. A 10-foot fence would be nice. No one likes breaking in through the front door or front windows. Nobody likes scaling 10-foot fences either. This complements the get a big fricking dog concept. Don't keep your car keys on a hook next to the front door. Newer cars are impossible for an average thief to hotwire. Easy as heck to kick in your front door and snatch the keys straight off the hook though. And related to the above, don't answer the door for strangers. If thieves are casing out the neighborhood, they'll pretend to be magazine salesmen or Jehovah's Witnesses just to take a peek of what's inside, especially that hook for car keys. Once again, a big frickin' dog can help here. Get an alarm system. If you can't pony up for that, get the stickers and signage off eBay. Don't keep anything in your car, especially work trucks or vans. Heck, I even know of someone who robbed a cop car. Keep your vehicles empty. Locks don't matter. The lock on the back door of a work van can be popped out in 5 seconds with a slide, puller, and a screw. The locks on your house are frickin' useless as well. If you're really paranoid and have a good budget, steel door frame and a solid steel door. I don't have much of any other advice on that. Just don't trust locks. Lock those doors. Even though I don't think much of locks, don't leave your house unlocked either. Deadbolts on every exterior door. Keep your expensive stuff out of sight. Your 70-inch flat screen should not be visible from the street. Your MacBook Pro shouldn't be kept right in front of your first-floor office window. Don't invite strangers over. Hosting an open invitation kegger is a terrible idea. If a thief shows up, they're either stealing something right then and there or they're casing the joint to come back later. If you have a safe, use it. It's utterly stupid how many people who have them just leave them open all the time because it's annoying. If you have firearms, try to keep that information to yourself. There's a whole subset of thieves dedicated to scouting out weapon owners and robbing them when they're not home. Don't post your entire social life publicly on social media. The people scouting out robberies aren't always across the street in a sketchy van. They're just following you on Facebook, Twitter, Foursquare, and Instagram. Keep anything that's really expensive in a bank security box. If your grandmother passed on a $50K diamond ring to you, don't keep it in your jewelry box. Don't do illegal stuff. The houses of substance dealers are robbed on a constant basis because the thieves know the cops won't get called, and the propensity for those victims to have expensive jewelry and electronics as collateral. Stay on the up and a lot of trouble will avoid you. Leave the TV and lights on when you're not home. Not only does it give the impression of someone being home, it will also entertain and comfort your big frickin' dog. If you're in an apartment, do whatever you can to add more locks, if possible according to your lease. Alarm system, cameras, all that stuff. There are lots of shady maintenance men and landlords out there. Lock your patio door even if you live on the 10th floor. Scaling the sides of buildings is actually pretty frickin' easy. If you're prohibited from owning a big frickin' dog, a little annoying yip-yapping ankle-biting dog can do something. Cats are fricking useless. Keep the flaunting to a minimum. If you have an expensive vehicle, at least try to keep it in a garage. If you have lots of expensive tools, don't fly a snap-on banner outside your garage. Don't put up a "This house is protected by Smith & Wesson" sign. Read up and be aware of how most popular scams work. Water meter scams, fence salesman scams, etc. Most of the time, someone will be distracting you somehow while their accomplice sneaks into your home. Just don't talk to strangers and you'll avoid all of them. Junkies love to rob the elderly. Medications and jewelry. Your broke college butt is probably safe, but please make sure your grandmother is all set. Don't leave an extra key under your doormat or under a rock or in your mailbox or on top of the doorframe. None of those. Also worth discussing are what to do when a burglar is in your house. You should get the F out. Your PlayStation is not worth getting shanked over. You will most likely lose any fights you start, so don't do that. Call the cops. Don't count on them to save you, but do it anyways. At the very least, you'll most likely have to file a police report anyways for an insurance claim. The chambering of a shotty generally scares the crap out of thieves. Real thieves will get the frick out of there if they think someone has a weapon. Junkies, though, might be too messed up to notice. Or they might have their own and not care. Still best to get the F out. If there is no way to avoid an encounter with the robber, get undressed. Not down to your undies, I mean 100% starkers. Get crazy, yell things. This is not advised for attractive women, but for the average male on the internet, that's a viable deterrent for anyone. Your thief almost certainly has a specific game plan in mind. They know how they're going in, where they plan to go, what they plan to take, where they plan to exit, and how they plan to leave. Anything that can be done that will majorly disrupt their plan will generally make them leave ASAP. Mace. You can't legally procure mace. Sporting goods stores can carry bear spray. If you can't get that either for some reason, wasp or hornet spray. Again, I really can't stress this enough. Goal number 1 is to get the F out. Don't bring wasp spray to a firefight. If you have your keys on you, set off your car alarm. And lastly, just some general advice. Follow your local news and police reports vigorously. You should be able to get a feel for the kinds of crime happening in your area, and you can figure out a game plan based on that. Personally, my area is high crime, but it's all smash and grab type thefts. While my vehicle has been robbed 3 times in the past year, I have zero concern whatsoever that I'll be the victim of an armed home invasion. It's just not the style of the area. If you have a choice, try to live in a moderately populated area near a police station. Living at the end of an isolated cul-de-sac is going to be a lot easier for a thief to get into without being noticed than a townhouse in a 100-unit property. Be friendly with your neighbors to the point where they'll recognize any sketchy activity. Keep your nose clean and don't associate yourself with sketchy characters. Crime begets crime. It's callous for me to say, but really 90% of the victims of crime that I know had it coming. Keep receipts for anything you paid more than $250 for, and keep them in a fireproof safe. If you do end up having to file an insurance claim, they're going to screw you over hardcore without any documentation. Be aware that for high-ticket items, they're required to be scheduled on your policy ahead of time. If you have a $15,000 home theater system or $20,000 in collectible Magic the Gathering cards, your insurance company needs to know about that ahead of time. Keep serial numbers and photos if possible of anything you care about. If your laptop gets stolen and you see it the next day in the pawn shop down the street, it won't mean anything unless you have that serial number already on file somewhere. Register all of your products with the manufacturer whenever possible. You will have one hell of a time dealing with an automotive theft claim if the thief used your car keys. Keep those safe. Make copies of all your important documents, including copies of all your credit cards. It'll be 100 times easier to cancel all of them if a thief gets them. Shred any important documents you're throwing out. I could write endlessly about identity theft. I'll save that for another day. Big fricking dog. Regularly back up your computer to some cloud-based service. Dropbox, Google Drive and stuff. If someone steals your laptop, it shouldn't mess up your life. Install some sort of tracking app on your computer and phone right now if you haven't already.
Ex-cons of Reddit. What's the worst thing that happened to you while doing your time? Serious replies only and some pretty messed up stuff ahead, so fair warning. Did 7 in Pennsylvania State Prison. Saw a guy who was accidentally cleared by psych to be in general population go out to yard to try to cut his own head off with the razor wire. It was morning yard, not a lot of people out, and he sprinted towards the fence as soon as he got out there. We all thought, oh crap, we've never seen someone try to get over these forests of razor wire, but then this guy turns around with his back right up against the fence, cops coming from 3 directions yelling into their radios, and he loops a circle of razor wire around his neck and starts sawing. A waterfall of blood. Cops froze, everyone froze. That was really unexpected. They told us he lived, but screw me if I know how. Since you're asking, it happened at SCI Somerset, down in the lower yard. Yes, most of the razor wire is up on top of the fence, but there's a single run about 8 feet up the face of the fence, maybe to just discourage you from testing out the rest of it. He found this one section in the corner of the yard where the fence makes a bend, where that run was sagging down enough he could reach up and grab it. I always thought the pain reflex of holding on to razor wire would have made him stop, but nope. The craziest part is that prison can be months and months of literally the same thing over and over, like everything's painted the same color, then that guy is over there trying to cut his head off. Oh wait, huh? Like that. And prison doctors suck so hard. Probably gave him ibuprofen and sent him on to the hospital. He did it because he was crazy. The first day I was assigned to a new unit after being sentenced, DUI 90 days. I got put in a 5-man cell. It wasn't my first time locked up and had been in the jail a few weeks, so I wasn't too nervous. The guys were cool to me all evening. All 4 had done time before in much worse prisons. They were all playing cards, and I didn't know the game, so I sat on my bunk reading. They started off saying weird, cryptic gay stuff, random stuff regarding Vaseline and who was cute on the block, etc. It ramps up over the course of an hour, then they start playing strip poker. Meanwhile, I've been hearing every word they say and studiously ignoring it. They got bored of being subtle and began saying awful stuff about screwing each other. I ignore everything, while secretly getting scared that they're going to do something to me. Eventually, all 4 got up, shirtless, and they trapped me on my top bunk and started grabbing at me. I yelled, "What the heck?" And they collapsed in laughter and spent the next 48 hours telling everyone who'd listen. TLDR, new guy in 5-man cell, they pretend they're gonna gangbang me. I suppose seeing people getting taken advantage of all the time and then not caring was the worst. New guys coming in and getting ripped off on trades and stuff. People with social/developmental issues just getting their food taken from them. Also, the psychology of people without goals gets weird. What was worst was just becoming part of that world. There are so many people there that have their rights taken away from them on a regular basis and don't care anymore. They choose to place value on being able to make others fear them. They stop thinking about the world beyond the walls and just get all wrapped up in the weird culture of the place. There was a day I was feeling proud of myself because I was running around organizing contraband trades, setting up poker games, and owning things like hardcover books and the only dice in the place. In that moment of pride, I realized I started to lose my mind. It's honestly hard to remember the months in there because most of the time, nothing's freaking happening. Nothing. You've read until you can't stand it. You've slept all you can. You can't play cards because your cellie is sleeping. So you stare at the ceiling and wait. It's so weird to realize you're doing the equivalent of time out for months. You're not waiting for 5 minutes, not waiting for 5 hours. You're waiting for a day that is months away. Just waiting. TLDR, it's like being in a DMV with a bunch of idiots and your number isn't up until next January. A user reminded me of the other thing that was awful on the human psyche. You're not really a person in there. You might have people that care about you on the outside, but they're still living their lives. The guys you play cards with are just trying to pass time, just like you. The officers don't care. You're just another pain in their neck. You just wear the same linen pajamas every day and just exist. 12 months on the inside. Very first day in prison. Very first day. I was in line for supper and this big guy comes up behind me, squeezes my butt, and whispers in my ear, "Are your panties wet?" Scared crapless, I turned around and the guy jumped back and said in a friendly tone, "Oh, my mistake, mate. I thought you were someone else," and left the line. I still laugh about it to this day, but during the time, it messed with me. Actually, he was a big solid who did honestly mistake me for his boy. I did 3.5 years in Texas prisons. I believe that the worst story I can recall was my first full day in a state jail facility, used as a transition center for up to 2 years before one is sent to a real prison in Texas. A guy came up to me asking if I smoked cigarettes. I didn't, but thought, why not? So he told me to head to the gym when that time came later that afternoon. We went to the gym and fired up a cigarette while we walked around the basketball court. As we were walking around the court, we approached the universal gym machine where a variety of people were using the various pieces to work out. The guy who offered me the cigarette advised me to follow him to the other side of the basketball court and to stay away from the universal gym. A few minutes later, a guy sat down and leaned back to do some bench press when 4 guys grabbed him, one on each arm and one on each leg. 2 other guys pull out cans of chili, or refried beans as both were available, in socks and proceed to hammer the guy in the face. The guy at the bench press had his face completely caved in. All I could think was, what have I gotten myself into? I also recall one other time when I was at the pre-release facility at the Beto unit where a guy had his face cut up with a box cutter and his throat slit over $20. The guy who died even had about $40 worth of cigarettes on him when he died. I never had anything happen to me directly per se. There were a few fights I got into over various things, usually disrespect. Processing into LA County Jail just after the first showers. Everybody is lined up to proceed to the next stage of processing. We were told to leave our towels in a pile on the floor and step forward when your name is called. One Hispanic fellow was called but did not speak any English. He was still carrying his towel. The deputy commanded him to stop and leave his towel in the pile. He did not respond. One deputy used his taser on the dude while 2 others dropped knees on him. The guy was rolling on the floor screaming apologies in broken English and Spanish. The guy received 1 warning. A few of us tried asking other Hispanics to inform him of the rule before we got to the deputies, but no further effort was made. I realize this isn't the worst tale in this post, just goes to show that violence happens for totally silly reasons in jail/prison. Been in that shower line before. Nuts to butts, they scream at you. Smells like balls, sweat, and hangover. Worst imaginable place on earth. I remember I was housed in Old County, a dingy, cockroach-infested, overcrowded, dirty section of LA County. You could wait up to 5 days just for a bunk, just sleeping on a concrete floor, eating bologna sandwiches. No blankets, no pillow, nothing. Once my bunk was available, they took me upstairs with 10 other people in the gang module. The cells are tiny, built to fit 2 inmates that pack 6 to 7 guys in there. The 7th person has to sleep on the floor. You get showers every 2 days, so a lot of guys shower in the toilets. While we were in the holding area, I saw them take out a body wrapped in a set of bloody sheets with the bloodied bunk mat not far behind. Apparently he was a blood that was thrown into a cell with Crips. Freaking nuts. When I finally get to my cell, the gate slams shut behind me. 5 of the biggest, blackest dudes I've ever seen in my life. A huge graffiti piece on the cell said, "Rollin' 60s Crips." That's Compton for those of you that don't know. One of the gang members comes right to my face and asks, "What's your name, white boy? Is it Bubba? Ain't you all named Bubba?" I knew I was in for a wild ride. Luckily, things went pretty smooth. Minded my own business and didn't get anything sharp in my neck or blunt in my butt. Still one of the most insane places I've been in my life. Absolute mayhem. Did 4 years, 4 months in a prison in Colombia, South America. For most people that are sentenced to more than a year, prison becomes a vacuum cleaner that sucks up your savings, your marriage, and relationships. It is a really hard time for most. I was engaged at the time. She hung in there for about a year and we parted ways. For you, life screeches to a halt, while life rolls along on the outside. One interesting thing that happens is that prison is like a filter that sorts out who your friends really are and who are your real friends. It goes the same with family. Prison is also hard on you psychologically. You have time, a lot of time, to think. For most people, being left alone with their thoughts can be stressing. One thing that would reduce any tough guy into a quivering coward was the word remisión, which is the term used when they transfer convicted inmates to other prisons around the country. No one wanted that. It wasn't a good thing. While I was there were riots, got tear gassed a bunch of times. One time, the big boss gave the order that every cell block barricade themselves, and one cell block took a couple of guards prisoner. This was on the news, and it was a big deal. They brought in the GRI, Group of Immediate Reaction, sort of a SWAT for prisons. These guys came seriously armed. When they ran in front of our cell block gate, all the guys ran into the cell block. Me and 2 other less experienced convicts stayed by the door watching, when one of them stood in front of the door and pointed his H&K MP5 at us. I don't know anything about guns, but the other inmates were calling it out. We put our arms in the air. The guy next to me starts screaming, "Don't shoot us, we are not armed." The other guys started praying, so I called out the same thing. "Please don't kill us." The GRI officers start yelling, "Shut up and pull your pants down." We do exactly that, and we took our shirts off for good measure. The guy tells us to get on our knees, hands on top of our heads. We're only in that position briefly because shots ring out from another cell block. The guy and some others run toward the gunfire, and me and 2 other guys run into the cell block. The first thing the prison does is cut off the power, phones, and electricity. We were on lockdown for 2 days. It was really intense, and I really thought we were done for. One night, everyone is in bed sleeping when suddenly someone starts screaming in pain. I thought that someone was getting killed. I was scared out of my mind because you have nowhere to run and nowhere to go, but I started hearing people getting up and talking. It turned out that a roach crawled into the guy's ear. After that, it was toilet paper in your ears when you go to sleep. One day, a young kid got caught stealing some old guy's disposable razor. The old man was begging the houseman not to hit the kid, but it was too late. Examples have to be made. We all had to stand by and watch this poor kid get beat like an animal afterwards. I wasn't the only one with tears in my eyes. Another terrible thing was on visiting days, we would all bunch up at the gate of the cell block waiting for our visits. You would see a new inmate receive his visit and most would break into heart-wrenching sobs. That was hard to watch, mostly because you remember the day it happened to you. Mothers, wives, brothers, sisters, they were all heartbroken and it was your fault. It just sucked. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it wasn't just one thing, it was many. Sorry for the long post. I saw a guy with swastika tattoos on his body befriend a flamboyantly gay black man platonically. Turned my whole world upside down. Actually, for all I know, it could have been a flamboyantly black gay man. Either way, it was sweet. While waiting in jail to go to the PDC, there were 5 guys from my block that liked making people fight. They made up stories and stole things, and then would act like your buddy and say they found your stuff in this guy's bunk. I was warned about this. They finally targeted me, and this guy twice my size. Luckily, he was warned too. They stole my deodorant, which is a prize where I was, and put it in his bunk. They told me where it was, and I acted mad. Then we all went to his cell. The big guy looked at me and said, "You stole from me. No one steals from me." I winked at him and began lightly slapping him. He laughed and slapped lightly back. We both were yelling. Everyone laughed and I got my deodorant back. The 5 dudes saw we knew what they were up to and moved on to other new inmates. Even though everything worked out, I was secretly crapping and wetting myself to oblivion in my mind. I'm glad there's at least one wholesome post to separate all the awfulness. Did 3 weeks in county for basically being at the wrong place at the wrong time. I had just turned 18 and had never been in trouble, not even in school. I was interrogated in a small room by a huge undercover agent with a stash who told me that they knew I was the ringleader and that he would make it his personal mission to see that I spent the rest of my life in jail. Did not know any details, so I said nothing. When I was put in a cell, my cellmate was a 6'2" bald Mexican gangster guy, and every night he would loudly pleasure himself while I clinched my thin bed sheets in fear of not sleeping until I knew for sure I no longer heard him. I was released for lack of evidence. Good times. I'm going to give you a family story. My cousin got into some cocaine and heroin problems shortly after his mother died. He did a robbery at knife point on a local shop where my brother now works. Anyway, he goes away for 10 years, serves 8, and was released 3 years ago. He has a wife and 2 kids and is doing really well, so happy ending. The story that comes to mind is during his 5th year, he is one of the longest serving members of the prison. Short stay prison in England with only a few people serving sentences over 2 years. Anyway, he gets a guy living next to his cell and starts chatting with him in the cafeteria. They become friends, and after about 3 months, people think nothing of it. But 3 months after he arrives, the inmates break into the back office of the prison and find everyone's records. They found out my cousin's mate has been transferred to this prison because his last prison found out he was a kitty fiddler and he was moved for his safety. My cousin gets told flat out while at dinner one day, "So-and-so, he's been done for kitty fiddling. Do something or you both get it from us." Fearing his safety, my cousin goes over and whacks the guy straight in the jaw with the tray, breaks his jaw and a couple of teeth. My cousin proves he was not sympathizing with the kitty fiddler and didn't get his head kicked in, sent into solitary confinement for 2 weeks. This isn't something that happened to me, but it's something I observed while in. My life was uneventful in my time, which was only about 4 months, and only during nights because I had multiple releases. Anyway, our jail was divided into sides and floors. The higher up you were, the worse of an offender you were. 1L was the floor with the men with releases or protective custody. 1R was women. Up through 5R and L were serious violent offenders. 1L was 12 individual cells, about 5 by 8 feet, surrounded by a larger cage, one TV in the dead middle. Our floor got the new arrivals who mostly, myself included for the first 2 months, had to sleep on rubber mats in the floor. One day, a young black man whom I knew from childhood was moved onto our floor. He'd been in the system since about 12. He had finally been granted work release. The guards hated him. All the guards were white. They didn't pull any punches. This was the year 2000. He was about 19 at this time. The night they moved him in was uneventful. The next morning, his release was for 6 a.m. to be at work at a restaurant at 6:30. The overnight guard was a jerk who loved doing things like dropping our food or releasing us late or holding us for an extra inspection or whatever. That morning, he was too busy to let this inmate out until 9 a.m. Our only phone was collect, and he did, for whatever reason, turn it off that morning so none of us could use it. Kid finally gets out, his ride still waiting, and beats feet to work. They actually let him work till noon, at which point he came immediately back like he was supposed to, during which time they made him sit in the sally port for about 5 hours without food, water, or bathroom. So he gets in after dinner and goes back to his cell, pretty dejected but not being bad or disrespectful. The next morning, they do the same thing. He gets to work and the manager can't do much but fire him, so he comes straight back to work and calls his PO on the way, and she calls the jail to tell them that he won't need his release the next day. So he comes back on the floor and pretty much immediately gets on the phone with his lawyer and family trying to find a new job. Cue the big fat guard dog. She comes walking down the floor outside the second cage laughing, saying something like, "How was work, X?" To which he responds, "You know how it was." And she, I swear to God she says this, says something like, "Shoulda known a lazy N wouldn't go to work on time. Looks like you're going back upstairs with the rest of the monkeys." We're all kind of appalled that she'd say that, and we're all white dudes. So he says something like, "Don't you have anything better to do?" Which is of course what she was hoping for. "Lockdown," she says loudly, which is where we all go back to our cages or mats. We all abide. She gets on her walkie and says her close first left and locks us all in about 3 hours before normal time. He says something like, "You ain't gotta take it out on all these dudes. They didn't do nothing." And she says, "Shut up, inmate, on your knees." Now you have to remember that she's about 6 feet in front of him, and none of us can see because we're all in our cages. Only the cage next to him can see her really, because he's in the last cell. So she starts screaming at him, calling him names, making fun of him, nasty, nasty stuff. So he calls her a dog or something. She pulls out a can of bear spray and just hoses him down and the rest of us by proximity. Then she calls in the response team, which is just one dude and his dog, and they haul the kid out, not fighting, in cuffs and drag him away, leaving the rest of us to wheeze on pepper spray for the rest of the night. That was one story. I could tell you about the guy with the wheelchair or the littering guy or lots of stuff. Thanks everyone for your comments. I didn't expect this to get big. I feel like I've had a pretty wild life and I love talking about the crazy things I've done. 8-time felon Eagle Scout EMT with SAR dogs? Okay. I've worked in youth residential group homes, worked as a counselor, taught public school, had to restrain lots of folks, been stabbed by students, been deposed for very technical ADA-related issues in big lawsuits, and I'm happy to share about all of it because I think our stories could all be shared. For the record, I was originally charged with 28 felonies and something like 15 misdemeanors for breaking and entering. Effectively, the DA took every single unsolved B&E from the previous year and charged me with it. We couldn't afford the $10,000 my lawyer wanted to go to trial. That was after the $10,000 he charged just to represent me. So we took a plea bargain of 8 felonies and 3 groups, all B&E. I was supposed to receive 1 to 10 years in the state pen for each one, but the judge realized that things weren't what they seemed, and instead grouped the charges and sentenced me to 3 to 30, suspended it, and gave me 6 months in counting with releases for work, school, and community service. So I pretty much just spent the night in jail for 4 to 5 months. Really lucky and really not too bad. I won't say that I was innocent, but I also won't say that I was remotely guilty of what I was charged with or what I pled guilty to. My PO, that's another whole series of stories, decided that I was the poster child for reform and had me speak to her interns about recidivism and corrections, and then for an unknown reason decided I was bad and tried 3 times to revoke my probation, all unsuccessfully. I graduated with a 3.7 overall GPA in 2003. 8 months inside, and one instance always sticks out in my mind. I was running out of phone minutes and spending what precious time I had left talking to my child. We didn't get to talk as much as I liked, had unfortunately more important people to talk to. Lawyers, trying to find jobs for my release, etc. This jerk comes up. I need the phone. Hold on, man, I only got a couple minutes left. He takes the phone and slammed it into the crappy payphone holster and abruptly hung up on my daughter. Still breaks my heart because I cherish every minute I can have with her. I worked as a guard in a military prison for 4 years, and after reading the stories in here, I'm glad I didn't transition to federal corrections when I got out. The things I read about in here. I didn't see either, but my buddy witnessed 2 events. One where a guy in the labor yard took his shovel and full-on swung it into the side of a guy's face, shattered his jaw and dropped like a sack. He lived. After his surgeries were done, he was transferred to a different facility. Another guy was an MP who was the arresting officer of an inmate. When the MP was sent to the jail, I don't remember what he did, probably some possession charge. We had a few prior MPs in the jail. He didn't remember the guy at all, but the inmate broke his jaw with an elbow coming out of the shower one day. His wasn't so bad off as the first guy. He stayed for the rest of his sentence, but was kept in a different block than the other inmate. The head cook was pimping out her female cooks to the inmates. Their families would wire money to the head cook, who would then get that inmate assigned to kitchen duties so she could screw the female cooks. As a result of this, we had to man an extra guard to stay in the kitchen at all times. The head cook was sent to Leavenworth, and the 2 she was pimping out were dishonorably discharged from the army. Outside of that, the worst altercation I've seen was 2 inmates fighting in a block and knocking the TV over. 40 inmates in the block collectively went, "Oh crap, no." And once the fight was over, they were all asking us to check on the TV and hoping it still worked. Didn't give a crap about the 2 bloody idiots we took to segregation. That TV though, fortunately it did still work. Put it back on its stand and plugged it back in and came right back up. The place I was at was mostly pretty laid back. We had a saying, it's 365 days of boredom with 5 days of excitement. It's worse than the hot days of summer and around Christmas. Tempers flare and everyone is depressed. Oh, there was also a time where a female guard was doing a block check and walked into the shower, which wasn't on, and found an inmate laying along the wall, head and neck on the floor, back and legs up the wall, pleasuring himself because he was trying to eat his own emission. She wrote him up for that. Was freaking hilarious to read that report. One guy had a heart attack in the rec yard. One of the inmates we had was a ranger medic. He was there because his chute line got stuck jumping from a plane and he shattered his jaw. Seems like there's a trend. And when he recovered, he had permanent jaw pain. Since he was a medic, he kept writing his own narcotic prescriptions so he wouldn't have to see the doctor, which is a big no-no. So he was sent to jail for drug abuse. Anyway, when the inmate had a heart attack in the rec yard, we sent a newbie private to run up to Delta Block for this inmate because he was the only one the guards knew had any experience with this kind of stuff. When the paramedics arrived, he gave a full account to them of everything that was going on and very well could have saved that guy's life. I spent a short amount of time in a county jail. The first morning, they came and handed out those small cardboard cereal boxes that come in variety packs. I remember wolfing down the cereal as I hadn't eaten in a day or 2 and was starving. They then came back around and served the milk. I was angry.
Fathers, what is the best way you have messed with a daughter's boyfriend when meeting him? I was the boyfriend. Her dad challenged me to a game of chess and lost horribly. Afterwards, he took me to the man cave and proceeded to try to beat me at pool and video games. He lost terribly. I kind of felt bad afterwards, but at the time, it felt good. My then girlfriend could only laugh at us being competitive and trying to beat each other in games. I'm still the ex-boyfriend he would rather her date, despite her and I not talking but once every 2 years. My sister's first real boyfriend was from about 3 hours away, and she brought him to the house for the first time without telling us they were coming. My father and I had no intention of messing with him. Due to some poor planning on my sister's part, they showed up on the Saturday before the start of the hunting season. At the time, my father and I were sighting in the hunting rifles up the field around 500 yards. Completely unintentional, but if I'd been in his shoes, I would have crapped myself. I'm a daughter, and I do not have any funny father stories, but I do have one badass mum story. My house has the front door on the second floor, and our front steps are large and can be intimidating. All friends are required to come inside and introduce themselves before I could get in their car and leave with them. So I had a date with a popular boy, douchebag, and he texted me that he was there to pick me up and to come outside. I told him that he has to come and meet my parents, and he did, although awkwardly and rudely. Long story short, he was incredibly disrespectful towards me, and I was back home within 30 minutes. Later that evening, my mother messaged him on Facebook, "You are the rudest boy to ever walk up the steps to my house." Shortly after, I got a large apology text from the boy. My mother didn't tell me about the message she sent until at least 6 months later. It was awesome. Oh, well done, Mum. Dads may be able to bring the threats, but this lady weaponized some good old-fashioned shame. I have one my dad did. I had the first boyfriend come over. I was 14, for Halloween, and my dad, a butcher, was unwrapping bones for our 3 dogs as a treat. My boyfriend walked over to my dad, who was using a knife, a great big one, to cut the shrink wrap off them, and asked what those bones were from. My dad, looking boyfriend dead in the eye, pulled a sharpening steel out of the bucket on the counter and sharpened the blade on the already sharp knife in swift movements, and said, "My daughter's old boyfriend." Boyfriend went sheet white and dumped me the next day. Thanks, Dad. Not a father, but my cousin has the best story about a first and last date. In the late 70s, my uncle was living a post-divorce bachelor life and was enjoying himself immensely, dating a younger woman who from a distance or behind resembled my cousin enough that they could be mistaken for one another, and if standing near each other, you might assume they were sisters. While he was dating this woman, my cousin, all of 16 at the time, was going on her first real date dinner. A school dance, the works. My uncle was slightly apprehensive about it, but was determined to make the best of the situation and accept the fact that his little girl was growing up. A few minutes before she had to be picked up, my uncle was struck by inspiration. He and his girlfriend were also going out to dinner that night, and he noticed that his daughter and his girlfriend were wearing the identical sweaters. So he sprung into action. He made his girlfriend give her necklace to his daughter, had them swap shoes, and put paper bags over their heads. When my cousin's date walked up, he was warmly greeted by Uncle, who ushered him into the living room and said, "We're all going out tonight. You pick your date and I'll take the other." The kid, speechless, stammered for a bit and then pointed. My cousin went out on a very fancy dinner date with her father to a French bistro, despite being terribly mortified. She admits that the food was exceptional, and her father let her have a few glasses of wine to ease the mortification. After dinner, he dropped her off at the dance and picked up his girlfriend. Let's just say neither woman was happy, and my cousin's paramour, so confused by the situation, decided it was time to end their relationship. I aspire to achieve such heights of mind messery. I feel like that could have been kind of funny if it ended with the choice. Like, ha ha ha, all in good fun, kid. Here, take the daughter out. Thanks for being a good sport. But to actually make him go through with taking out the other girl? The frick, man? I was the daughter. Boyfriend and I were sitting in my kitchen when Dad came home from playing volleyball. After talking a few minutes, without any warning, Dad dropped his pants. Thankfully, he had gym shorts on underneath. I told this story at Dad's funeral, and it got a lot of laughs. Was the boyfriend. Wanted to take girlfriend on a date, but she said her dad had to meet me first. He was a single dad, so it's not like her mum would have been there to hold him back or anything, and dude was pretty buff. My girlfriend goes in her room while her dad sits me down on the couch and sits across from me, not saying a word, but looking straight into my eyes the whole time. 15-year-old me was pretty shaken. He finally says, "I'm gonna make this short. Anything you do to my daughter, I'm going to do to you." We just held hands that day. That's when you reply, "You're gonna finger my butt?" I'm Korean. I play StarCraft. He's going to have to beat me on the Hunter's map to get permission for the first date. Yes, old school Brood War StarCraft. I fully respect this method of proving oneself to a prospective father-in-law. After all, it's potentially the scenario I'm most likely to succeed in. Boyfriend of a girl with 2 dads. I've yet to meet her real father, and she doesn't want me to. He's a huge crapbag that cheated on her mum and then fled across the country. Her stepdad I see on a somewhat regular basis. He's a character, and that's for sure. We told our parents about our relationship about 2 to 3 weeks ago, and the first thing he does is shake my hand with a grip that's way too hard for normal, and then takes me aside and asks what my intention is with his daughter. While asking this, he's gripping his hand around my neck. It should be noted, I'm a big kid. I'm 6'1" and like 200 pounds. I'm not easily intimidated. At that moment, this man scared the crap out of me. As I was trying to muster up an answer, he drops his hand and hugs me and tells me he's messing with me and that I should have seen my face. Needless to say, she doesn't like him much either. Boyfriend of a girl with 2 dads. At first I thought this meant she has same-sex parents, which meant you had to put up with twice as many dad jokes. I'm the boyfriend in this situation. Was at my girlfriend's house, her dad saw me, walked up to me and said, "Who the frick are you?" and then proceeded to follow me around, practically touching my face with his until I left. Fortunately, he was electronically tagged and couldn't follow me out of the house. Just FYI, he was tagged for sticking up for kids being beaten up by other men. So I want to give a bit more context to this. I went to my girlfriend's house to pick her up. She wasn't ready, so I went outside. While we were on our way out, he made his comment and then followed me out of the house, obviously looking me up and down while remaining uncomfortably close. This possibly lasted about 20 seconds. This wasn't an aggressive thing, he did it purely to make me feel awkward and on the spot. I think he wanted to see what type of guy I was, how I would react to that sort of confrontation, etc. According to my girlfriend, her ex-boyfriends resembled mouthy kids. Perhaps her dad was testing my level of maturity. I can't say for sure, never asked him about it. Hope this explains things a little better. When I brought my first real boyfriend home for dinner for the first time, I forgot to mention that my dad was also home for dinner. He's a policeman and comes home for meals, so we rock up and there's a police car in the driveway. It's normal for me, but my boyfriend's face was literally, "Ooh, uh-oh." My dad always calls my boyfriends what's-his-face until he gains respect for the guy. My current boyfriend just recently got his name privilege, which has happened, I think, twice. I made up a game. I call them by a different name every time I address them. Goal is to see how many times I can call them before they correct me. Record is 27 in one visit. My pawpaw greeted my aunt's boyfriend with a single gunshot out the front door, into the old gutted truck about 20 yards away from the main driveway. He still fires off a greeting shot when they come in and out from town, 17 years later. To expand, a pawpaw is a grandfather if your country is F. My pawpaw is half Japanese, half Native American former US Marine, sheriff and EMT, current Etsy scarf and shawl shop owner. I'm trying to decide if that sounds more West Virginia or Alabama. Louisiana, and don't you forget it. My daughter just turned 8. I am here for notes. Opens notepad. Begin. Welcome, new dad. Well, the rule seems to be threaten or imply violence, and if you own a weapon of some kind, so much the better. Narrator and the I Am the Genius channel does not condone this method. My daughters are 2 and 4. When my oldest was born, I started working out again. I found the best inspiration on days when I'm feeling lazy is to imagine myself as some nearly mythical titan ripping the door off its hinges to greet some poor kid intent on taking my daughter on a date. So my plan is long-term, and I'll check back and let you all know how it goes. My dad has told every single one of the guys I've brought home, even if they were just friends, that he's not afraid to go back to jail. My dad has never been to jail. My dad is very good at deadpanning. Upon meeting my boyfriend, Dad told him that he was too tall. He's almost 7 foot. He wasn't sure if my dad was messing with him or was actually serious. I had to explain to him later that a good portion of what my dad says should be taken with a grain of salt. I was the boyfriend in this case, but this one has always stuck with me. Everyone knows the old "dad is cleaning his gun" cliché. Well, this is a slightly different version of that. He was polishing a sledgehammer. It turned out he was actively just screwing with me and didn't care, but I had to give him credit for creativity and for leaving me at an absolute loss when I walked into their living room and saw the gleam from the shiny hammer. Not a father, but if I have a daughter, I want to dress like a clown and say, "Well, I'm off to work." These are the ones I like. It's funny, but at the same time you're not threatening a kid. 10 out of 10. We hosted a beautiful teenage exchange student for a year. When a boy came to take her to a dance, I looked down at him and said, in roughly these words, "I am responsible for her right now, but her real father is even bigger than me, and you don't want to do anything that would tee off both of us." I went to tell my new father-in-law that I was serious with his daughter and intended to marry her. He interpreted it as me asking for his permission and told me, "Now isn't the right time. Maybe in a few years." That really messed me up. Good guy, language barrier. It all worked out in the end. Daughter here. First time I bring my boyfriend to my hometown, we visit my parents. My mum tries to stuff him with food, while my dad excitedly describes the great deal he got on my sister's new car. My boyfriend comes to join me in the middle of this, and my dad stops, looks him dead in the eye, and excitedly says, "Wanna see something cool?" We are greeted with a picture of my dad when he was 21, buff, shirtless, and flexing. I begin to cover my face in embarrassment as my dad looks excitedly at my boyfriend for a response. My boyfriend simply says, "You look good, man." Pretty sure my dad did this to embarrass me instead of mess with my boyfriend, but did put him in a pickle for a second there. My boyfriend now makes jokes about how hot my dad is, just to embarrass me more. I call this the worst first date experience thanks to my dad. I moved to a new school in the 3rd grade and fell in elementary love with a boy wearing those pants that unzip to reveal shorter pants, or shorts. It was not until the 5th grade, after endless diary entries and tampered with MASH outcomes, that my crush finally asked me out on a date. My dad immediately said no, and I sobbed. I sobbed and sobbed until my mother talked my dad into letting me go. The only problem was, he was coming too. I decided not to tell my crush that my father would be attending the date with us, but instead pretended to be just as confused as he was that an older man was sitting directly behind us during the movie. The movie was Just Married. My poor crush tried to put his arm around me, and I felt my face flush as a voice from behind us said, "You want to keep that arm?" My father laughs to this day about how far we were leaning away from each other after that, and is very pleased with himself that he ended my affectionate advances. What my dad doesn't know is that we kissed every recess after that date until our terribly dramatic breakup on the soccer field. One thing I will say seriously for a second here is that if you try and forbid your kid from interacting with the opposite gender, they will generally find a way. These kids are thankfully a little young to get into real trouble, but I genuinely feel like rebellious teens will go further than they might have gone otherwise just to get back at their overbearing parents. Boyfriend, now husband. I came over to meet her extended family for Thanksgiving, sat down next to her uncle. He looks over at me and says, "I'm gay, you know," and stares at me. I replied with, "Me too," and moved closer to him, practically sat on his lap. I like this guy. Been married to her for 2 years and been together for 8 years now. Her family is hilarious. My wife's aunt is very outgoing, playful, and loves to party and drink, and mess with the boyfriends. The first time I met her, she was already drunk and got very handsy with me. She'd put her arm around my shoulder and pull me in tight, kiss my cheek, push my face towards her cleavage, etc. She was trying to make me squirm. She says, "I got a hot tub out back. Why don't you and I go for a dip?" And I, uncharacteristically, shot back with, "Well, I didn't bring my swimsuit. Would you mind if we just hop in naked, just the two of us?" She busted up laughing and ever since always jokingly refers to me as her boyfriend and tells my wife to back off of me, that I'm hers, etc. I was told I passed the test that evening. It was like being jumped into a gang, but instead I was molested by the drunk and crazy aunt of the family. They're a fun family as well. I was the boyfriend. My girlfriend warned me that her dad liked to be sitting in his chair, cleaning his shotgun, whenever one of the girls brought a boy to meet the parents. She told me that the gun was a relic and had been disabled or deactivated or some damn thing. Don't remember the exact term. She said he was real proud of it and said it was a Springfield something or other. So I walked in and there he was. I said, "Hey, nice Springfield something or other," and asked if I could hold it. He handed it to me and I looked at it and said, "When did you have it deactivated?" The girls, who were all watching, smiled. He wasn't amused, especially after he started a discussion about guns and it was clear I didn't know anything about them. He eventually figured out that she warned me and he was none too pleased at how bold I was. I just thought it was funny. That was the start of a long and rocky relationship with that man. Much to his dismay, I married his daughter. Now that I'm the dad, I grill the boyfriends about what my daughter has told them about me and her mother. My being a forensic investigator is not something my daughters usually lead with, I have found. And my comments about knowing how to make it look accidental are usually met with some level of clenching. Brother to the sister that brought him home. My old man wrote his name on a 12-gauge shell and set it on the mantel above the fireplace and said nothing. It was about halfway through dinner before he noticed it. I've never seen a face get so white so quick in all my life. They're married now. Shell is still sitting there. Was the boyfriend. Walked into the cleaning the guns gag. He asked, "What are your intentions with my daughter?" And without missing a beat, because sometimes I lack a filter, I replied, "Depends. What do you think I can get away with?" Her mother laughed so hard she dropped a glass and broke it. "Mine was. That depends how she feels about rubber chickens and tapioca. This wasn't my dad, but my brother. I brought my boyfriend home for a week over the summer. We're in college and live in separate states. We're not at school. And I was very excited for him to meet my family. I had already met his, and they were pretty cool. My parents were very nice and normal to him, but when we sat down for dinner that night, my brother, who was 2 years younger than me, came downstairs, chatted normally for a bit, then said, "Wait here." He runs up to his room and comes back down about 5 minutes later with a stack of papers and a pen and sets it down in front of my boyfriend. "It's a quiz." It was a quiz. A literal quiz that he had typed out. He made him put his name and the date and everything. The questions were divided into 3 categories: sports, music, and movies. They were all things my brother considered vital for my boyfriend to know if he ever wanted to truly belong to the family. My boyfriend, being the cool guy that he is, took it all in stride and only got about 2 wrong on the whole 30 questions quiz, with no preparation or studying at all. My family was suitably impressed, and he's around a year and a half later. The following story just had too many little anecdotes about the father in question, so bear with me. Am the daughter. Dad and his best friends dressed up in Speedos, mowed the lawn, barbecued, held hands, sang horribly off-key together, and nicknamed the poor soul McBigMac. He stopped hanging out with me after that. Dad and his best friends still do weird stuff together like this, and they are my favorite people. Oh, Dad and his best friends are hilariously straight, but hey, you can't really be considered best friends if people don't think you're a little gay, right? I'm intrigued as to how you can be hilariously straight. You sleep with clowns of the opposite sex. What the F? Oh, where can I get a dad that funny? Well, he likes to show up at the mall in grass skirts, coconut bras, and a siren light on his head, but only when you have boys around. I'm willing to sell mine. The first post I thought, boy, he's silly. Now I'm thinking maybe he's not all there. The first time I met my ex's dad, he had just had surgery. I think I was 15 at the time, and while I was waiting for her, he asked me if I would go into the study and put on some music and make him a drink. I got him a single Jameson with 1 ice cube, because that's what my Irish family members drank, and I knew he was Hibernian, and put on a Fleetwood Mac record because he had an awesome player set up. That was him testing me, apparently. He told me later that I passed because I didn't just plug in my phone into their auxiliary cord and grab him a beer. I hung out with him once, way later after his daughter and I had broken up, and he ordered me a Jameson with a single ice cube on his way out of the bar. I was the boyfriend. I wanted to take my girlfriend out to see a movie, but she said that I had to meet her dad first. Her dad runs the local farmer's market, so I had to stop by that morning. Luckily, it was winding down because after an awkward hello, he put his hand on my shoulder and led me around and introduced me to everyone at all the stands. Now, for an introvert such as myself, this would have been bad enough. But no, as he was introducing me to everyone, he used random female names for me. "Hi there, so-and-so, this here's Stephanie, and he's taking my daughter on her first date. Hi guys, meet Martha, he's taking my daughter out." It was kind of funny afterwards. I had a boyfriend named Nelson. My dad took great pleasure in doing Nelson's laugh from The Simpsons whenever my boyfriend came over. We didn't last long, lol. Pretty sure you mean, we didn't last long, ha ha. Beat him up in Battlefield and a few other video games. I'm almost 50 and have been a gamer since my early teens. I have more experience with games than he has. A mate was arrested for drug possession by his girlfriend's police officer father. He was going to be introduced to that family that weekend anyway. Would have loved to have been a fly on the wall that evening. Boyfriend. Hello, future father-in-law. First of all, I want to apologize for my twin brother. He is the black sheep of the family and in no way representative of my or my parents' values and culture.
Men of Reddit. What are some green flags on a first date? She listens sincerely and talks sincerely. When you find a common talking point and she genuinely adds to not only the conversation, but your view on said topic. Good conversation gets me going. My wife, who I've been with for 8 years, and I had an incredibly awkward first date for the first hour. There was physical attraction, but we were both awkward and shy. Conversation was so stale and forced that I texted a friend that it wasn't going well and I could meet in an hour. Until, for whatever reason, she asked me if I had a zombie apocalypse plan. And I did. So we nerded out together over that and other topics flowed in more naturally. We talked for 4 hours and walked from South Keys to Rideau Center in Ottawa, walking the entire 4 hours. One good shared topic can start something amazing. I have to 100% agree. A good conversation can make you a 10 in my book real quick. Looking back, The thing that should have been the biggest green flag about the woman I married was that she made just as much effort to see me as I did her. She texted me first, suggested hangout times, and came up with date ideas just as often as I did. I don't think I realized it back then, but I realize it now. When we were first dating, my wife was in law school and an hour-and-a-half drive from her house. One night a week, she would come to my house. She was temporarily living with her parents while she went to school as a single parent. We'd have a date night, she'd stay over, and she would get up at 4:30 a.m. and drive back. That was 10 years ago, and she still always makes me feel appreciated at that kind of level. I try to up my game and respond back at that same level, and I tell her that my goal in life is that she never realizes that I'm the one that got the better end of the deal when we got married. I love this, and I will say it is something that I definitely look out for when hanging out with people that I'm interested in. If I'm the one that's always making the plans or texting first, I will eventually become a ghost because I don't feel wanted. You don't realize that hours have passed while you're sitting and chatting. You sit in your car at the end of a night and talk for another hour, and realize even after one date you genuinely miss their company. Oh hell yes, this is one green flag. In fact, that's one of the things I love about my now wife. Every long drive, about 6 to 10 hours, we would have something to chat about, and as a result we would get so into our conversation that we missed our exits at least twice. At one point, we were heading to SoCal for a family event, and despite knowing the way by heart, we still managed to miss our junction exit because of our conversation. It was about K-pop and K-drama in case you were curious. Listening and reciprocating questions. I don't want to talk about myself the whole time. This isn't a job interview where I'm the employer. Ask questions about me too. Also, good manners go a long way. We accidentally showed up at the wrong restaurant. Well, I showed up at the north end of town and she showed up at the south end. She ended up coming to meet me halfway, and after dinner we talked at a park at a lake until 2 in the morning, and it felt like no time had passed. She wasn't on her phone at all. I told her that I don't kiss on the first date, just to make sure that it's not about a hookup. At the end of the night, as I was dropping her off at her car, she gave me a nervous smile and then kissed me. Then she gave me a hug and even texted me to see if I got home, as she ended up making it to her place before I got to mine. Anyways, we've been married 8 years now. I'm sorry, but I almost fell in love with your wife. That's so beautiful. Dude, girls making the first move is pretty hot, but the "did you get home safe?" that text is always wholesome. You feel comfortable talking. So simply put, yet often unattainable. She has a level of confidence, nothing crazy, but you can tell that she has an idea of what she wants. When she puts her phone away, hell of a green flag. After posting this, I saw a couple of comments come through about safety. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Do whatever you need to do to feel safe for sure. I could have been a bit clearer in the original comment and said phone is silent and she leaves it on the table, or something like that. I wanted to get across that I'd prefer her to talk with me and not people on her phone. Ain't that the truth? I understand checking messages, but when you're on it for more than 5 minutes or so, at least excuse yourself and make a phone call if it's an emergency, or if you're not enjoying the date, just say so. It's sad that being present on a date is a green flag. Yeah, it is pretty sad. I feel you always see those comments about men having such a low bar to make women happy, but people don't realize it's the same for men. We are simple creatures. When she brings the 1977 to 2011 flag of Libya to the first date, big green flag. My daughter went on a date with this guy she met on a dating app. We were worried sick, making sure she texted us her location every time she went somewhere else. She got very sick on the date and he took her to the ER, waiting for her for almost 6 hours. When she went back, he wasn't allowed to go with her. So instead, he went and got her Waffle House since she had missed dinner. She still wasn't out after 6 hours, so he sat in his car with the heat on during the Georgia summer so that her food would stay hot. When she finally got out, he drove her home with her food because he wanted to make sure that she got some rest since she was sick. They made plans to go on another date when she was feeling better. They got married 3 months ago. We love him and I officiated the ceremony. Damn, give that guy a medal for sitting in a car with his heater on during the summer. She compliments you on how you look. Such a simple thing, and it goes super far. Conversation flows easily and naturally. You're able to talk about big things like religion, politics, and children without feeling like it's a potential argument. You're both laughing and relaxed the entire time, and you leave the date itching for the next one. I'm with someone really special right now, and I'm such a quirky, eccentric person, and the fact that I can just be myself around her Has me feeling like it's safe to fall in love. Pray for me, bros. This one is really special, and I've never felt like this before. I really hope I don't screw this up. She showed up. Dude, this is my biggest fear after a rough breakup. I finally dug myself out of a funk and matched with this girl who lived 4 hours away. This is why I believe in destiny, because my settings were not that far and neither were hers. We agreed to meet at a town 2 hours away from both of us. So I drove the 2 hours to meet her. I sat in that park for about 15 minutes absolutely terrified she wouldn't show up. Things went great. We dated for a couple of months until her psycho ex went bat crap crazy and lured her back in by what I think was poisoning his kids that she used to take care of, and when she showed up, he messed her up pretty bad until she took him back. Yeah, that took a turn and I never heard from her after that when she went to meet him, and he started texting me from her phone. Do I know if it's all true? Not really. But no one would move to another state to be with someone just to turn around and move back 2 weeks later. In conclusion, people suck. That story took a turn that I wasn't expecting because, well, the guy mentioned destiny at the start, so I figured they were going to be living happily ever after. Guess not. If you pay for a meal or anything, and she says thank you and is genuinely appreciative, a shocking, and I mean shocking, amount of women won't even say thank you when you pay for stuff on a date. Bonus points if she offers to split the check, or I don't know, if you bought the movie tickets and she gets the popcorn. Example, my now wife offered to split the bill on our first date. I declined and paid. She thanked me, then when we got a drink at the bar after, she said, "Let me get this round." That's when I knew she was a keeper. I will say an odd green flag is when you offer to pay and she doesn't get mad. I once went out with a girl who legit got upset that I offered to pay because she was an independent woman and didn't need me. It was hella odd. Lots of laughter and smiles. You don't want the date to end. She asks you questions about your life instead of what you have and how much you earn. And she genuinely seems interested. She's honest even if it's to share the less desirable side of herself or nature. She asks questions about yourself. This is a big one. Worst thing in the world is to date a narcissist. I bought opera tickets once for me and a lady because we were both into that. It's very late when we were done, so I offer, and she accepts, a lunch date so we can talk about it. The date went fine, and then she paid for it. I was a bit surprised. I'm of the belief that unless arrangements are made beforehand, payment is done by those who offered the date. She said, "You paid for the opera tickets, and I had a great time then, and now I'm not about to get greedy." They listen and are actually interested in things you have to say. They talk too, obviously, and don't expect you to entertain them, but rather has a nice conversation back and forth. No obviously expectations on food, drinks, or pay for whatever you're doing. For me, it's a big green flag when you're adamant on separate checks for the first date, because it means that they are serious and not just out for a free meal, no matter how the date goes. Honesty about your intentions is also a really big green flag for me too. Knowing if someone is possibly in for something serious with you only, or dating around to find themselves. And potentially, eventually, a nice partner helps in setting expectations on both parts. And you might find yourself great friends instead, even if things don't click. For more quick green flags for what I find myself falling for in a date, like I did with my wife, I'd say instant attraction. It's important for both parts in an intimate relationship. Can't have a long-term romantic relationship without attraction, unless you're asexual, of course. Another is having fun together. My wife is also my best friend. I still love hanging out with her after 8 years together. Intellectually compatibility. Equally smart, or in our case, equally stupid. We understand each other well, both in language and references. We argue and discuss things from similar points of understanding even when we disagree. To us, it's a cornerstone of our relationship because even when we get into fights, we can take a step back and reason to the point of understanding. We might still not agree, but at least we understand why. Similar core beliefs. Things like religion, how we look at people, how we consider kids, war, death, religion, and the meaning of life, money, career, family, etc. The big questions that shape how we go through life. They kinda need to be aligned for a long and healthy relationship. And if you find out early that they don't, you can save yourself a lot of heartache. Many people might disagree on this one, but I believe if you want a lasting relationship without one or both of you constantly having to censor/alter their views to avoid arguing, you need to have a similar core to begin with. I was sick with something, a lot of pollen where I'm from. We'd barely been talking a week on a dating website and I had mentioned my sore throat and runny nose. She asked me for my address. Being a dude, I thought nothing of it, and I figured it was for a date coming up. I didn't have a car, so I figured she was trying to figure out how to pick me up since she didn't have one either. 2 hours later, I get a knock on the front door. A bag of assorted cough drops, tissues, cough medicine, just everything you could think of, hot chocolate included. We had our first date the next day, and boy was I sappy. I had the opposite of this happen before. Had just started dating this girl, and one day she randomly came to my house in the morning. Was let in by my grandmother, and I was like, what the freak are you doing here? It was so random, and she definitely became a toxic ex. So maybe randomly showing up can be a red flag instead of a green one. If the person can win against me in Mario Kart. You see, girls always say they could beat me in Mario Kart as a flirt, but then they don't realize I'm deadly with the green shell and I will crush them. It can't be helped. My first date with the person I ended up marrying went like this. We met online, got to know each other a little, then agreed to meet after a while at a bar that they were familiar with. We sat, talked, had a few drinks, had some bar food, and got along like we knew each other for years. After the bar closed, we sat in their car. It was winter time. For another couple of hours and just BS'd with each other. I knew then I might have found someone special. My wife and I aren't drinkers. Our first date consisted of walking around a park for hours, talking easily about who we were. We left and I definitely wanted something romantic with her. She wanted to go for another hike with me. It took until the third date when she thought of me in the same romantic terms. The emphasis is conversation. Hookups at the very most can only take up about 30 minutes. Find someone you can talk to in life. It'll get better. My wife was 30 to 40 minutes late on our first date. It was the first time that we had ever met. She was very apologetic, and once she settled down from feeling bad about being late, she asked me questions no other gal ever had. Nothing crazy, but just questions genuinely interested in me. She has been the sweetest angel every day since too, and she also gave me 2 amazing daughters. Hard to explain, but her green flags were, and are, everywhere. Aside from punctuality. Text me when you get home. Love that. If they're polite to customer service people, it's usually a good sign that they'll be nice to you. Looks like pictures, helps carry the conversation, actually shares information about yourself, don't stick with the generic answers for whatever reason, doesn't interact with their phone, although I get it if I just came back from the bathroom, and be on time. Not on their phone, not talking about X, seems engaged in the conversation. Well, I've been on quite a few first and second dates in the last 3 years. Some were a ton of fun. Some really sucked. The ones that ended up going anywhere had most of these in common. On time, conversation flows easily, she asks questions and contributes. If we're having fun, going on a second location is a good sign. At the end of the date, if she leans in for a kiss or even asks you back to her place. She's got to be polite to the staff, and if you pay for the date, being thanked is nice. Also being straightforward about her date goals from the start. If she genuinely cares about how you're doing in life, if she makes effort to understand you as a person, and if she chooses to split the bill at the end of the date. Being a girl going through these comments, really? These just feel like common decency. Dating must suck for guys. Speaking as a guy, one positive is we do fear SA a lot less than women have to. But on the downside, we are socially expected to carry the conversation, pick up the check, bear the burden of making the first move, and take a backseat to whatever is on the girl's phone at any given second. I'm an old widower, but for me, green flags were open honesty, vaguely similar thoughts on politics and religion, absolutely no facade stuff, and taking turns asking questions about each other and paying attention to each other's answers. We talked for a while and really hit it off and eventually planned to meet up at her place to hook up. When I got there, we ended up sitting on her couch and just talked and talked and talked. This was our first time meeting in person, and our planned hookup had nearly turned into 4 hours of wonderful conversation. Been together 5 years, married her back in September. Easily the best non-hookup I've ever had. Met a woman for the first date at a local mom and pop restaurant serving Polish food. We both got the variety plate. I can't eat beef and she can't eat pork. We had discussed this before meeting, so I gave her my beef and she gave me her pork. Now that's already pretty freaking cute, right? At one point, we were both talking and laughing, and I started having an asthma attack. It takes me a minute to find my inhaler, take a puff, and I start to come back from it. And just as my breath is coming back to normal, she says, "So I took your breath away, huh?" I laughed so hard I needed to hit the inhaler again. Gotta love a person with a quick wit. Wasn't a first date, but a hookup at a party. I was chatting to her and her friends when she asked me if she could kiss me. It was so odd, but she did it in a super cute way. I agreed, but I told her that I think it should be in private. She asked me what room was mine, as the party was at a hotel at the time. We ran up and met in the room. When in the room, I started joking about how random this was, and my quirky personality kinda slipped out. She just mirrored my energy. Every quirk, joke, stupid slip-up, and action just worked with her. It was like we always knew each other. 9 p.m. quickly turned into 5 a.m. I knew this was something special, and I could tell she felt the same way. We moved in together within 3 months and have been side by side for the last 16 years. The green flags was it just worked. My girlfriend farted, no shame. Simply said excuse me and we both laughed. I swear we sounded like the damn horn section when we're together. She's the best. She was just really genuine and honest, and was just as nervous as I was when we met. She also had brought me a small gift that she knew I would love. She was honest about her intentions and expectations in dating. But what really topped it off was how quickly we were able to laugh and be silly together. An ultimate green flag is that the conversation just flows naturally on both sides. I remember the first date. Though we did not call it a date to avoid being labeled, it was rather a meetup, with my significant other that I met on Tinder. We met up at a public coffee place, and the talk was just endless covering of a lot of topics. When we realized it was already getting dark, we still wanted to continue talking, and it was already a 3-hour conversation. By the time we both got back to our homes, it was 11 p.m., and I could not believe what had just happened. I'm horrible at reading people. Many years ago, I learned this little trick. You invite someone to do something in the future, but you leave out obvious details. If they ask you for those details, they're probably actually interested. Example, a group of us are going bowling next Thursday after work. Would you like to come? If she says yes, but doesn't ask what time exactly or which bowling alley, she isn't coming. I see what the poster is trying to imply here, but some people just expect you to let them know. Like me personally, if someone's like, yo, we're going bowling next Thursday, you wanna come? Then I would be like, cool, just let me know. Which means when you figure out the time and place, just let me know. Does your dog or cat like them? Animals see things we don't. I got the dog in the divorce. Years later, I went on a date with someone who ended up coming back to my place, and we stayed up talking until 3 or 4 a.m. I was sleeping in a hammock at the time and didn't own a bed, and also wasn't looking for a hookup, so my date slept on the couch. When I came out to the living room in the morning, my dog was sleeping on this guy's legs. Doggo had never come to bed, just stayed in the living room with my date. We celebrated 5 years this past January. We lost the dog a few years in, but my cat sleeps near my partner almost every single night. Open body language. This shows if they're actually interested in you and genuinely like you. If their body is pointing towards you and their arms aren't crossed, but also pointing in your direction, it shows that she's comfortable with being around you and probably likes you. If they cross their arms and their body isn't pointing towards you, or if you are sitting beside them on a bench and she puts her legs up on whatever side you are sitting on, this means she doesn't feel comfortable with you yet and probably doesn't like you. Talking about big things like politics, religion, kids, marriage. When I got out of my last relationship, I screened dates. I'm old enough to know what I want, and I wasn't going to waste my time dating someone who didn't match up. Also asking about STD testings. Shows me he is responsible and selective about who he sleeps with. I get one done every 6 months anyways, so I'm happy to compare results with him. We're married now, and our first anniversary is next week. To be honest, asking somebody about STD screenings I think is a positive green flag. I think if you're willing to do that for a possible relationship, I think it shows a lot about your character.
What's the most legendary thing that happened at your school? My school was on a hill and the tallest building in the area. During Fleet Week, the Blue Angels flew what must have been 100 to 200 feet above it, shattered like 30 windows on the top floor of the school. I attended a high school called Rampart that, despite being a blue ribbon school, had serious budget issues. The budget problems got so bad that the principal started renting out the school gym to anyone willing to pay up to use it. Some guy rented the gym out for a Saturday night, saying he was going to hold a church dance. Instead, he held a rave that got so out of hand it destroyed the gym. The incident quickly grew into legend amongst the students. Many claimed to have been there or to have known the guy who threw the rave. We weren't able to use the gym for the rest of the year. They kept the doors locked, but there were constant attempts to force them open so we could see the damage. It didn't take long for the students to start referring to the school as Rave Part, and whenever we had to sing the national anthem, we would finish it in the home of the rave. The next year, we had a new principal too, but we never knew if the old principal was fired because of the rave incident. 2 teachers screwing in an empty class. They thought they had locked the door. A student caught them. They were both fired. We have a school news channel that sometimes did live segments about new stuff going on. This was every morning in homeroom. One morning, they were doing a walkthrough of the new part of the school just built. They walk into a staircase and some girl is sitting on some kid's face on the floor. This is at 8 a.m. and the entire school saw it. Some dude in English class sat next to the electrical outlet, so he decided to grab the kid next to him and stick a piece of metal into the outlet. Shocked the heck out of both of them. They were both fairly okay, but almost scared the teacher to death. Also, there was the time a girl screwed 2 dudes in the auditorium during a basketball game and it was caught in the school camera. Her family ended up sending her somewhere else after that. This happened at my school in the UK around 2002. We had an indoor swimming pool at my school that was always really cold, and one particularly freezing December day, a bunch of us decided that we really didn't fancy having to do swimming for PE, so we dared this kid called Todd, who was pretty crazy, to crap in the pool. He said he would do it for 10 pounds. We had a quick whip round and managed to get the money pretty quick between us. To avoid getting caught, he decided to crap into the pool from the roof through a skylight. A lot of the buildings in our school had staircases on the outside, so it didn't take much effort for a couple of us to give him a leg up onto the roof. Once he was up there, we ran back down to the pool and looked through the windows. Sure enough, after a couple of minutes, we saw 2 or 3 of Todd's crap apples drop into the perfectly still pool, causing a gentle, disgusting, but oddly beautiful ripple. There was no PE for us that day. There was a huge sexting scandal where a handful of girls' images were being sent around. Well, when the school caught wind of it, they did the only thing a school could do. They held an assembly. Girls in the auditorium and boys in the gym. After an hour or so of, "you shouldn't do that," they had the district attorney come in to talk about the legality of underage sexting. One of the seniors stood up and asked him if it was legal if they were over 18. He said yes, and the entire place went nuts. Everyone was cheering, clapping, and laughing. The principal walked over to the mic and said, "Who asked that?" The guy stood up again and triumphantly said, "Zen Master Steve!" The audience once again erupted into cheers as he got called into the principal's office. I watched a friend sneeze and hit their head off a desk so hard that they gave themselves a concussion. There's a tradition here in Australia that the year 12s, final year of high school, usually have a day called Muck Up Day, where they play pranks or whatever in the school. Well, one year, the year 12s decided to screw with the whole school and placed roadwork signs and cones on one of the main roads next to the school. They diverted all that traffic through the school, essentially screwing up a lot of people's days. It is the best thing anyone has done on Muck Up Day at our school. At the school where I used to teach, the students told me that years ago, someone swapped the science teacher's Bill Nye video with the hardcore adult tape. According to legend, the teacher didn't notice for quite a while, and the students watched several minutes of smut that day. I told my class that it was a stupid rumor, and I'm sure that never happened. When class was over, one of my students walked up and said, "Mister, it's true. My brother was the one who switched that tape." Went to a boarding school, so several screw tapes and photos got leaked. This was 2004 to 2006, so before iPhones and whatnot. This mainly happened due to a program called MyTunes, where you could share your iTunes and movie libraries on the network. So people would accidentally drop their videos and photos into the folder that was shared without realizing it, and people bored looking for new music or whatever would stumble upon it. Once the administration found out about a video and the student was 18, allegedly, he had to watch the video with the president of the school in his office in order to determine that it didn't happen on campus and that both participants were of age. Didn't get in trouble at all. I mean, glad that he didn't get in trouble, but could you imagine the awkwardness of having to sit in an office with a supervisor watching your own screw tape? I took an A+ course in high school. We had an all-right sized lab room for stripping computers and another room full of computers for other worker lessons. There were a few stuffed animals in the lesson room as a half-hearted attempt by my teacher to decorate. Those come into play later. My teacher kept finding certain history on one of the computers. It was always horribly spelled or incoherent searches, and she assumed it was a freshman being smart to impress his friends during a different class. One day she gets fed up with it and makes a special project for us nerds in her A+ course. She gave us one of the lab computers and the smallest cam she could find and asked us to make a hidden camera. We complied and made a decent one and brought it into the other room, set it to record with more than enough hard drive space and aimed it at the perp's pewter. The next day, we fire up the vid and see one of the seniors coming in before school starts, Googling some videos and giving himself the old wax job. He cleaned up with one of the stuffed animals and went about his business. She threw out the stuffed animals and the cops got involved. Kid got into trouble but went into the army after high school, so maybe it all worked out in the end. Sorry, the stuffed animal? It didn't do anything. Why that? Why Teddy? My junior year, the seniors put hay everywhere inside the freaking English building, where it basically looked like a farm. One of the admins wasn't even letting people look at the mess inside. Also, when I was in 2nd grade, my school was supposed to have a fire drill, so for some reason the alarm wasn't going off. The lunch ladies decided it would be a good idea to set something in the kitchen on fire to make the alarm go off. They burned a good majority of the lunch that was supposed to be served that day. My high school was a bit on the sketchy side. During my sophomore year, there was a fire, and despite all the fire drills we'd been doing since kindergarten, no one really knew what to do. Some students made their way 10 blocks away to a Wendy's and a Waldbaum's, where they proceeded to rob both. At the end of my junior year, this sophomore threw his freshman girlfriend through a display case. She ended up with 13 stitches, and he got a lovely pair of handcuffs. In my senior year, we got a new principal because the old one quit at the end of the year prior. Anyway, this was the year the 5th Harry Potter book came out, and even before the school year started, people were calling her Umbridge because of her reputation at her last school. Most of us thought she couldn't be that bad. Then we met her. She really was awful. To make matters worse, she was racist to boot. One of the black teachers didn't agree with her teaching style, so she fired his lazy butt, in her words. Within a week, the NAACP was at the school. Before she finally resigned, there was a student walkout and people started throwing cafeteria fruit at her whenever they saw her. We were all glad to be rid of her. When I was in grade 9, I was sitting in the computer lab working during the communications class. All of a sudden, we hear this loud revving getting louder and louder, something passing by very quickly then fading away. Our teacher ran out of the room after it, and crike, I had no idea the man could move that quickly. I was in crutches due to a sports injury, so I had to hobble out behind the rest of the class as we tried to find out what was going on. Apparently, one of the seniors brought an ATV to school and drove through the halls. What was legendary was that he somehow was never caught. This was in Canada in the early 2000s. There's a video floating somewhere on Facebook, which probably means it's lost forever. Pretty crappy since it was literally one of the early digital cameras taped onto the guy's helmet. If I remember correctly, they let him in through an unused auto classroom's side door, and he rode out the back. The area was very rural, so he probably drove it in instead of in the back of a pickup. Most likely rode it straight home too, so yeah, no proof at the end of it. A guy from my high school thought it would be a great idea to streak through the halls on the last day of school. After running around buck naked, people who witnessed it began whispering about some guy streaking. Pretty soon, the entire school was talking about this unknown mystery guy who ran around with his willy out. Biology teacher witnessed it and said, maybe it's just chilly today, but he isn't very well endowed. Soon after, he went to the front office and turned himself in. He apparently walked into a room full of administrators, all women, and just said, "It was me." They all busted out laughing and said, "Just don't do it again, okay?" Low blow from the bio teacher. Viewers, it is time for me to regale you with the story of Jeff. Jeff jumped off the roof of the chapel into a dumpster filled with empty cardboard boxes. 50-foot drop, 8x8 dumpster. Twice a week at our school, the junior and senior guys were on garbage recycling duty after lunch. We'd gather all the garbage bags and recycling from the classrooms and offices. The building was a school attached to a church with offices and a sort of community center. It wasn't a huge building, but it was pretty big. We'd take out all the garbage and trash out to the dumpster, which was set next to some sheds behind the building. That's how it all started. Jeff jumping off a 10 to 12 foot shed into a dumpster full of cardboard boxes. We'd laugh, roll the dumpster out to where the garbage guy could get to it. Someone else rolled it back when the garbage was collected. One day, Jeff climbed the backstop of the baseball field right near the dumpsters. That was a 25 to 30 foot drop, I think. He made that one look easy. Then he dropped in from out of a tree. That was probably about 40 feet. Finally, about a month from our graduation, he told us his plan. He had to break into the crawl space above the chapel, accessible by a padlocked trapdoor on the 3rd floor of classrooms, then climb up through the attic space of the chapel and onto the roof. The chapel parking lot sloped sharply by about 7 to 8 feet, which is where the 50-foot drop comes in. We saved boxes for weeks, set them up at the dumpster, put it in the parking lot about 15 feet from the chapel wall, and watched him jump. Our school has a huge statue of a Mustang at the front because our mascot is a Mustang, naturally. It's about 40 feet up above the entryway, so everyone sees it. One morning, there was a bright pink adult toy on it because Mustangs are male and our huge statue was neutered. It took them a while to get it off of there because they didn't want to ruin the statue or leave any piece of the evidence behind, and it was too heavy to remove from its place, so there it stayed with a banner hung across the entryway blocking the statue. Nobody knows who did it except for the masterminds of the crime. For information, the school was in southwest Pennsylvania.
Ha! Took him a while to get it off!
My first day of high school. I was starting at a whole new neighborhood from moving and knew no one, so I kept to myself. I didn't handle crowds all too well, but I mustered the courage to get out of bed and get ready for school. I ran downstairs and talked to my dad about what I expected to get out of the day and ate breakfast. I walked out to the corner to catch the school bus, and that was awful. Nowhere to sit as everyone felt they each had their own dang seat. Story short, I made it to school. As soon as we made it to the school, I started walking to my locker. There were so many people, I was about to lose my mind, and I asked myself if it could get any worse. It did. A girl bumped me from behind to get ahead to catch up with someone. In one swift action, she ripped off her backpack and unzipped it to pull out a kitchen knife to stab the girl directly in front of me right in the back. I froze. I couldn't breathe. I felt dizzy. I turned around and walked straight home. I lived about 10 miles away. I just kept walking. I never looked back. I just wanted to make it home, crawl upstairs, and sleep in. One hot day in June, when I was in 6th or 7th grade, there was basically a riot at our school. Pretty much every kid in the school at lunch recess gathered at the office entrance to the school and started chanting, "It's too hot! We want to go home!" It was pretty incredible. A teacher at one point came out and said, "We're calling the police," to no avail. Finally, the bell rang, and everyone cheered and went inside. No one I've talked to remembers this event. A student accidentally butt-dialed his mother while the class was watching Platoon. The SWAT team showed up. Apparently some of the guys a few years ahead of me got into the principal's car, took off the brakes, and pushed it up a makeshift ramp to the roof of the shed. I don't know how we got it down. The guys in my year managed to swipe the vice principal's smoking pipe. They put up ransom posters everywhere. In another class, they managed to get into the ceiling tiles and plug socket, so they took an old phone with a dirty ringtone and a charger and left it up there. For whatever reason, because of acoustics, the sounds seemed to shift around the room as you walked. The number got passed around so people could call whenever they needed to disrupt the class for a while. 853 missed calls, 2 missed SMS messages. Seems like every couple months you practice fire drills, and one day the alarm goes off. We start making our way down the stairwell and there's smoke. I get outside and say to somebody, "Wow, they make these fire drills so realistic, smoke and everything." The reply I got back was, "The school really is on fire." So, yeah, my school caught on fire. That was legendary. I'm not the brightest tool in the shed. Somebody! Kid gets yelled at, runs out of the school into the woods. Helicopters come and search for hours for the kid. School goes on lockdown. SWAT team finds him a mile away eating Snickers in the woods. Comes back next week like nothing happened. I saw the whole thing out the window. Very crazy. Happened last month. For 5 consecutive Halloweens in a row, someone managed to set off a smoke bomb in one of the stairwells, causing the school to have to be let out early. They do it just after lunch, after most everyone had just entered their first afternoon class. It was amazing. Like, heck yeah, getting to go home 2 hours early on Halloween. A massive Roman candle fight involving about 50 kids in the middle of the field on Halloween night. Every Easter, our religious education teacher bolted a big wooden cross onto the wall and people could volunteer to go on the cross. You stood on a little platform and there were leather straps to hold your hands in place. He said that if anyone stayed on for longer than 5 minutes, he paid them £5, but nobody ever managed it. This was 6 years ago. 2 years ago, the app Yik Yak was growing in popularity at my school. Maybe about 25% of the student population had it, but since it's anonymous, people just started roasting other people through it. Just as people were no longer using Yik Yak, our craphead principal heard about people roasting other people. He made an announcement talking about Yik Yak and digital citizenship. Naturally, everyone re-downloaded the app, and anybody who didn't previously have it downloaded it as well. Word quickly got out that some teachers got Yik Yak as well and were monitoring it. People started to post stuff like "fight in the art hallway" and laugh as a group of 3 teachers would speed walk by then towards the art hallway, only to find out there was no fight and see the next post "fight in the cafeteria." This went on for 45 minutes until people moved on to better pranks. "I'm pulling the fire alarm next period." Our craphead principal misread this as firearm and called a lockdown on the school which lasted for 80 minutes and there were cop cases all around the school. Later that night, my school was on the news and Yik Yak is now blocked within 100 meters of any school in my school board. TLDR, my school got Yik Yak banned in my entire school board. Maybe it wasn't just my school board, maybe it's all of Canada or something. I'm really not too sure. I went to a professional training high school. We had to choose a major for our senior year, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we would spend the entire day in classes involving our chosen major. Strange, yeah, only lasted for a few years. Now it's just a regular magnet school. Whatever, here's my story. My tech teacher was cool as heck. He'd give us a project on Tuesday morning, and we'd have until Thursday afternoon to turn it in. If we were done early, have fun on the internet. If late, well, that's a strike on your grade. Most of the students busted their butt on projects on Tuesdays, so we could watch Jerry Springer on the TV cart in the back of the room on Thursdays. Me and 2 other kids would play Warcraft 2 on the network computers we set up. Seriously, this teacher didn't give a crap as long as our work was done. One Thursday, one of the students in my class was flipping around the in-service channels the school had. Sometimes they would play a movie on it for some class. Guess what? Adult films. Hardcore black-on-black adult films. Student quickly turned it down and turned the TV from the line of view of the teacher. Teacher still heard it. He came over, coffee cup in hand, looked at the class, looked at the TV that wasn't turned off in time, looked back at the class, took a sip. First off, anyone offended? No. Keep it low. If someone comes in, turn it off. I hope that teacher is living their best life. A guy drove through the school on a dirt bike. He was doing wheelies and dodging the supervisors who couldn't catch up to the dirt bike on their golf carts. Then, later that day, he posted the video he recorded of the whole thing from a GoPro on Twitter. He was a legend. I was in an all-boys high school, and this is just one of the many pranks and stuff we did. This happened a few years before I was in the school, but one guy decided to get back at one of the old crappy teachers we had whose class was on the 2nd floor. He decided to purposefully not do his homework to get in trouble as to set the plan in motion. She was also constantly picking on him, and that day he started crying, fake obviously, and saying he can't take it anymore, etc. He then proceeded to jump out of the window onto a high jump mattress that was placed underneath the window by his friends. Before the teacher could look out of the window, they removed it, and he went to lie down on the ground in a manner which resembled a mangled body. The teacher freaked out, went to fetch the principal and nurse, etc., and before they got up there, he got up and went back to class and sat down at his seat as if nothing happened. Teacher was speechless. Like I said, this happened a few years before I was in the school, so I didn't really hear about the aftermath of their shenanigans. It's also possible that it never happened, and that it's an urban legend going around. In high school, we weren't allowed to wear costumes for Halloween. My senior year, a giant group of us, about a good half or 3/4 of the class, decided that we were going to dress up anyway and meet in the parking lot before school to march in together. I spent the night before making my costume, which was a suit of armor made out of cardboard with metallic tape, a sword made the same way, and one of those broomstick horses. The next day, we all gathered like we had said and marched in together. It was hilarious, but I guess they found out, so the deans and assistant deans were waiting for us in the cafeteria to take our IDs so we could report to detention. One of my friends had dressed up as an ATM that he made out of cardboard. When they asked him for his ID, he was ready and slipped it out of a slot like a debit card. The best part was at the end of the day when we all gathered for detention. They didn't have enough room for us and all the other people that were there for other reasons. Out of frustration, they decided to make our detentions Saturday ones and spread them out. It was totally worth it though. Strap in, this one's a long one. At our school in the UK, on the year 11's final day of the year, they would do Egg and Flour Day, essentially pelting the lower years with eggs and flour. This was a long-standing tradition at my school and went back decades. As you can imagine, with parents understandably annoyed at the sight of the kids coming home covered in mess, the school received a lot of complaints. Because of this, the school clamped down on it in the past 2 to 3 years with huge punishments for those caught taking part. To get around this, the year 11s typically moved the location to somewhere off grounds where students could be ambushed on the way home, typically the local shops. Anyway, it was our turn. We were the year 11s now. We wanted to make our mark. A group of around 10 or so of us got together towards the end of the year and started brainstorming. It took us about a week to come up with it, and it was perfect. Or so we thought. Here was the plan. The school was recently going through some renovations, so a few things were moved around and a few areas were off limits, including one of the fields. Now, this field was where we would go in the event of a fire drill. Because of this, the fire drill point was moved to the tennis courts. Great. Why was this great? Because the tennis courts bordered on the local woods. The very edge of these woods were bordered by incredibly dense growth that was very difficult to see anything through. Between the growth and the tennis courts was a 10-foot fence, and just behind the growth was a pathway. Perfect. So the plan was set. We'll send a guy inside, get him to pull the fire alarm, then send a barrage of eggy flour death to the unsuspecting lower year peasants beyond the fence. Skip forward to the day of the event. We sent Tim in to be the man on the inside. We were ready and waiting in the woods, armed to the teeth with pancake ingredients. We waited a long time. It must have been an hour and a half at that point. We'll come back to this later. This was before mobile phones, so we had no contact with the man on the inside. An oversight. We sent in Christian to find out what was going on. And we waited. Not long this time, 20 minutes later, the bell went off. It was happening. First, we could only hear the piercing ring of the bell. A minute later, the loud chatter of many prepubescent voices. It got louder and louder. The tennis court was filling up. Students were getting into their lines. We waited for the perfect moment to strike. A few more minutes later, things quietened down. We started to hear the teachers shooting out names, going through their registers. This was it. Time to strike. With the students now silent, it was time to unsilence them. Without saying a word, we unleashed. Cartons of eggs were emptied into the air, over the fence and down onto the underlings into the most satisfying crack splats. Flour baggies were spilt and tossed over, leaving trails of white smoke before landing with a puff and filling up the area with clouds of potential biscuit. The screams, oh, they were glorious. The complete sound of chaos. It started with silence, shock as to what was going on. Then the fear set in. Nobody wanted to be egged. The tennis courts exploded into a mass of running kids, dodging yolk, trying to get out of the way. Teachers trying to find out what was going on, barking orders and trying to calm everyone down to little success. And that was it. Within 60 seconds, we had exhausted our ammo and it was time to retreat. Laughing hysterically and celebrating our accomplishment, we melted back into the woods and fell back to our meeting point. It was done. We were legends. Now let's fast forward a week. Remember Tim, the guy on the inside who took too long pulling the alarm? Turns out he didn't pull the alarm, because we noticed they were all covered by CCTV. Another oversight. When Christian went in, he didn't bother looking and pulled the first alarm he came across. He was called into the school a few days later and ordered to give a list of names. It was either he did or prom would be canceled that year. Can't blame him really, I probably would have done the same thing. Those who were on the list, the choice was either 8 hours community service in the school or be barred from prom. We all took the service and spent the day with the school caretaker doing absolutely nothing. It was great. 10 out of 10 would egg again.
Military veterans. What are your best stories from boot camp? Just a foreword here, folks. Due to the military tradition of swearing like a sailor, or in this case, like a soldier, there will be by necessity a certain amount of language replacement in this video, more so than I've had to do in any other video at the time of writing. Assume that if a phrase seems slightly mild, I've been editing it to make it safe for YouTube. Thanks, narrator. I had been in boot camp for like 3 days. We were downstairs in formation at attention with our stupid safety flashlights about to march to PT. Obviously, when at attention, you're not supposed to move. Then I suddenly had an itch on my nose. Only happens when you're at attention. So I tried to sneak out a quick scratch, but for some reason my brain shut down and my dumb idiot self decided to use my flashlight. I scratched my nose and was almost home free until I had this weird thought. I wonder how bright this is. So I stick the flashlight to my eye, click on, click off, go back to attention. No sooner than my hand hit my side, I hear, "What the frick was that?" I was immediately pulled out of formation and screamed at by no less than 6 drill instructors. They screamed some of the funniest insults I have ever heard until this day. Then they lead me to every squad who was formed outside, 6 I think, and made me demonstrate my amazing and godlike talents for all 6 squads before letting me return to formation. Oh, there are so many stories to choose from. One of the funniest is who we had to salute. Every living being. Literally. So I'm walking back from a med appointment I had when a squirrel crosses my path. So I render a snappy salute and bark out a, "Good morning, sir," just as an officer is walking across the street from me. He ran across the street to investigate just who the heck I was saluting. I responded, "The squirrel, sir." He said, "What the frick? You saluted a squirrel?" "Yes, sir." "Who's your company commander?" "Petty Officer Shanks, sir." "Okay, move on, dummy, and stop saluting squirrels." "Yes, sir." One of my platoon buds was a bit of a masochist and got off hard to the sergeant yelling at him. It was sort of funny to watch this sergeant berate him for a good 5 minutes, and then he'd run off to rub one out in the washroom. One time we were all sleep deprived and Sarge was just ragging on him, telling him he's made of stronger stuff and to keep going, you weakling, before he fell over and said, "Oh, frickin' crap." Pretty sure he came in his pants and passed out. Navy in 2003. We were out on the grinder, which is our name for the asphalt area, and you can't speak unless spoken to out there. RDC is feeling playful and shouts my name. "What adult fun time position creates the ugliest babies?" Me, both thinking and not thinking at the same time because I knew the answer to the joke. "I don't know, petty officer. Why don't we ask your mother?" He turned beet red and everyone in my division let out a gasp. There was some yelling after that, but later that day he called me into his office and told me no hard feelings. So in the end, not bad. We had a kid in my boot camp platoon named Jackson. The senior drill instructor was Sergeant Jackson. Poor Recruit Jackson was known as Recruit Laundry Number 38 for the whole time, because he didn't rate the name Jackson. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the fine contributors to these stories shall list the standout names of their squads. We had a private named Whore. The drill sergeant took one look at his name and said, "Too frickin' easy." Never mocked him for it. We had a Barbie. The poor guy got away without a word until one day at FTX, the drill sergeant wakes us up at 3 in the morning and the song Barbie Girl over the loudspeakers and a very specific dedication. Platoon 3117 had a recruit Dumcum, who was a ginger Canadian, and a Redick, who was black. We had a trainee named Balls. Yep, Balls. None of the TIs ever gave her crap for it, but man, if every single one of them didn't pause and try not to laugh during roll call. My surname is Quick. Same thing happened to me. Although it made marching orders like, "Platoon, by the quick march," amusing. One time I yelled out, "Just me, Corporal?" Everyone laughed. I got yelled at. Good times. Navy Boot Camp had a female with the last name Guzzler. They had to change her rank to fireman because all the RDCs that saw or heard the name swarmed on it. We had a guy named Pajarianon. Day one, our chief RDC told him, "Yep, I can't pronounce that crap. Unless I say otherwise, your name is P13. Throughout Boot, he acquired the names P13, PJ, Pija, and Mr. P. The first couple of weeks of Boot are full of medical and dental exams, and if you need a procedure, you get it done right there. Tons of guys had their wisdom teeth pulled, and we had one guy come back right before lights out with his mouth full of gauze and loopy from the drugs. Our DI called us all to the center of the room, formed us up, and then told us to sit Indian style on the floor, and that Recruit Toothy was going to tell us a bedtime story. He pulled up a chair for Toothy and then told him to tell us the story of the Battle of the Monitor and Merrimack. Toothy mumbled that he didn't know the story, so the DI told him to just make it up, and for every fact that he got right, we'd get to sleep an extra 5 minutes in the morning. What followed was like a live episode of Drunk History, minus any factual accuracy. As best as Toothy could recall, the Monitor was British and the Merrimack was Old Ironsides, and that in the end, they shot the crap out of each other and everyone died. The end. We were all dying laughing, but the DI sat there stone-faced. After Toothy was done, DI just stood up and said, "That is exactly how it happened. Well done." Got up, turned off the lights, and walked out. Got a bladder infection in boot camp. I peed the bed and tried to hide it as long as possible. I was afraid that if I admitted to it, then I would be kicked out. I was able to hide the urine-soaked mattresses by switching them out with extras that were to the back of the TIE squad bay every morning before the drill instructors woke up. This went on for a couple of weeks before someone told on me. The drill instructor wasn't exactly sympathetic about my situation. While everyone was getting ready, he had me take my sheets to the quarterdeck and do push-ups with my face dipping into the pee on every down movement. That kind of sucked. After breakfast, I was told to meet the corpsman, and after I'd be sent to a doctor, and my separation from the Marines would be started before I even earned that title. Screw that noise, I'm going to finish this crap. So instead of going to see the doctor, I wandered around MCRD San Diego aimlessly for 3 hours, while trying to pull a look off where my face always looked like I was moving with purpose. It worked. Not one Marine stopped me to ask what I was doing. When I finally went back to my squad bay, I simply told our scribe that the doctor said to have me woke by firewatch every 3 hours. The DI that laughed as I was leaving asked me how soon I was leaving when I returned. I told him the lie and he bought it. Got lucky. My name for the duration, Recruit Peabody, not so lucky. I ended up graduating and serving 8 years honorably. Not my story, but from a friend who was a couple of weeks behind me in basic. Air Force training, San Antonio, Texas. It's week 2 or week 3 of the 6-week training course, and it's chow time. As with every other basic chow, you queue up, keep your mouth shut, follow the designated lines, get your food, and eat quickly and quietly. Do not get up from your table until the designated time. Fail to follow any of these procedures will result in a crap storm courtesy of Hurricane Angry Fricking Training Instructor. Every flight that goes through basic has that weird kid that just doesn't quite fit in for one reason or another. My flight had a southern kid who unfortunately supported every negative stereotype about the southern US there was. He was Cletus the slack-jawed yokel made flesh. My friend's flight, however, had a kid who was quiet, calculated, removed, and quite possibly a sociopath. During this particular time at chow, he was sat down with his food and ate a decent portion of it. Suddenly, he stands up and without following the designated paths, makes a beeline to the ice cream machine. Trainees are not allowed ice cream until they have TI permission, which doesn't usually happen until the final week. That did not stop this kid from getting 2 ice cream cones, one for each hand. He walks back to his table, passing the snake pit, where the instructors eat, along the way. He begins to go to town on these ice cream cones, alternating licks between one and the other. The instructors at the snake pit are in shock at the sheer audacity. All heads turn to his training instructor, their smirks and furrowed brows encouraging him to rush over and psychologically destroy this kid. He gets up and rushes over. "What the heck, trainee? Who in the heck said you had permission to get ice cream? I don't recall giving you permission to..." The verbal barrage continues as the TI assaults him with every harsh word he can muster. He ends his tirade with, "Who the hell do you think you are?" The trainee turns his head slowly, looks the training instructor dead in the eye, and without a smile or any other display of emotion, softly, confidently says, "I'm Batman." The TI was nonplussed. He was either so unprepared for that response, or thought it was so hilarious that he had to turn around in order to save face. He walked back to the snake pit without a word. Batman finished his ice cream. I mean, does anybody else think that the instructor had just realized that there was a potential sociopathic serial killer in the flight? Another commenter writes, "Well, he did get permission. Oh man, I left the snake pit after my 3rd recyclement. After a couple of months, I knew my crap. I grabbed a dessert with every meal. One time I had 7 of them on me at the same time." "Oh, you think you deserve a dessert?" "Yes, sir." "In what year did the Air Force separate from the Army?" "Sir, trainee dumbass reports as ordered. 1947, sir." Another TI, "Who is your flight chief?" "Sir, trainee dumbass reports as ordered. My flight chief is Master Sergeant so-and-so, sir." "You give a new reporting statement with every answer, trainee." "Sir, trainee dumbass reports as ordered. Only upon the initial report or when switching instructors, sir." This went on for some time. They pretty much just let me have the cake after that one. I had the pleasure of witnessing this one myself. You've already heard about the snake pit. Well, the MTIs on mine regularly pull out trainees and question them on stuff we're supposed to know. One day, they pull out one poor sap from our brother flight. It went roughly as follows. "Trainee, what's the insignia of the full colonel?" Trainee, "The insignia of the colonel is a bird, sir." "What type of bird exactly?" "Permission to adjust, sir." Adjust. The trainee then proceeds to set his tray on their table, puts his hands up in the Egyptian pose but with both hands outward, turns his head to the side and says, "Like this, sir." The onlooking TIs nearly choked on their food while the questioning TI stared at him dumbfoundedly for a few moments before yelling at him to, "Get your crap off our table and get the frick out of my sight." Oh, that was probably one of the best times I've seen a TI at loss for words. After someone addressed the drill sergeant by his name, not drill sergeant name, the DS screamed at him, "Oh, do you know me? Are we friends? Do you come over to my house on the weekend, drink beer, and have adult fun times with my wife?" Still one of my favorites. My favorite story is from 2006. We were salty Marine recruits in our last week before graduating and going home. Normally, I guess they like to bring in new super motivated drill instructors to mess with us. Well, one night in formation before we hit the racks, the new sergeant notices one of my friends, Private Law, was rocking back and forth. He says to Law, "Quit rocking, Law." To which Law yelled, "This recruit will never stop rocking, sir." One of the first days in basic, a guy in my platoon was standing at attention while having his room inspected by the sergeant. Because there was a large piece of fuzz/fluff on his shirt that immediately drew the sergeant's attention. Imagine a female French-Canadian sergeant with this accent, although obviously much harsher. "Recruit Bloggins, what is that on your shirt? Is that a fluffy?" "Yes, sergeant." "Why is there a fluffy on your shirt, Bloggins?" "I must have missed it, sergeant." "Missed it? But it is so huge. How did you miss such a big fluffy?" She plucks it off him. "Hold out your hand." He holds out his hand and she places it on his palm. "This is Mr. Fluffy. Find a home for him, like a pill bottle or something. From now on, whenever I want to see Mr. Fluffy, you must bring him to me." And so, for the rest of basic, every time the sergeant found a piece of fuzz, even on someone from a different platoon, she would yell out, "Mr. Fluffy!" And Bloggins would have to march over to her double time and present Mr. Fluffy, and she would formally hand him the new piece of fuzz to add to Mr. Fluffy. There was hell to pay if he didn't have Mr. Fluffy with him at all times. Every unit has its mascot. I'm just glad that in this case it was a fluffy rather than a furry. Great Lakes, 1994, Company 159. I had a bottom bunk, guy on top bunk was a guy who barely spoke English. One day we were marching around and he was too afraid to speak up and let the company commander know he had to poop. He pooped his dungaree pants and left a trail that those marching behind him walked through. When CC realized what was up, he halted the formation, grabbed the guy and ran into the nearest building. When they reappeared, Poopy Pants had removed his t-shirt and fashioned it into a diaper to make it back to our barracks building. One night, the guy in the top bunk next to mine had a nightmare and in his sleep he jumped out of his rack. He crashed into my bunk, spraining his arm, ankle and putting a gash into his head, and had no idea what was going on. Another night, I was on fire watch, making my rounds at 3 o'clock in the morning. The A-Rock, one of the recruit leadership positions, was a big macho guy who decided he couldn't take it anymore. He tried a belt around his neck and was going to hang himself when I caught him. The chief on duty was teed off that he had to be awakened, called for assistance, and that's the last time we saw the A-Rock. My brother was in the chow hall and witnessed a TI call out someone who had placed their flashlight in their belt. I guess you're not supposed to do that. So the TI lights him up. "Is that where you keep your fricking flashlight? Is it a fricking lightsaber, Luke?" He made him stand at the end of 2 cafeteria lines, holding his flashlight like a lightsaber and striking dead the airmen that were leaving the 2 lines. At one point, there was a lull in traffic and the TI screams, "Oh, so fricking lightsabers don't make noise when they're motionless." So old buddy has to make the vroom, vroom noise as he waits for his next victim. The worst part of being there is that you can't laugh or you get punished too, and DIs can be some funny mofos. When I was in bed, one of the cafeteria walkers walked through the chow hall while we were eating. She was quite obese and wearing apple-bottom jeans. Our DI was sitting at the head of the table and started humming Get Low. Naturally, we all laughed. So after the chow, we went back to our bunks and got smoked. DI put Get Low on the speakers, and we did jumping jacks to the beat until they sang Hit the Floor. At which point we had to hit the floor and do push-ups while singing. And every time we laughed, he started the song over. I still shudder when I hear it. I'm an Army veteran. One morning in basic training, it was about midway through our 3-month cycle, and we were lined up for breakfast chow. While waiting in line, we had to stand at parade rest in columns of 2 in our PT uniform. We couldn't move or anything at the risk of being pointed out and screamed at. The uniform consisted of somewhat black short shorts and a grey t-shirt that said Army on the front. Well, the guy 3 rows in front of me had one of those no-reason cases of the morning wood. And the drill sergeant caught him as he was trying to move to hide it away. He pulls him off to the side and starts screaming, "What's wrong with you, Private? Why are your privates saluting in the chow line?" Of course, this yelling spreads to the ears of 2 other drills, and they come over as well. "Hey, Battle, come look at this! Hey, at ease that crap, Private!" As this was said, they noticed, and one drill sergeant bent down, face inches away from the full-mast culprit, and bellowed, "At ease! Private, you better get that crap in check!" I entered into the building before I could hear anything else about it. To this day, I still don't know how the drill sergeants went through that without so much as a smirk. I don't know what I'd do if someone shouted, "At ease," directly at my morning wood. Nothing in life so far has prepared me for that. We had a drill sergeant make a private carry a branch everywhere she went, so it would replenish all the oxygen she was wasting. We had a guy named Fitzwater. We called him Fatswater. We weren't just calling him that because he was fat, which he was also a lazy piece of crap who was constantly pretending to be hurt to get out of work. Anyways, he got teed off at us one day and said, "If anyone else calls me Fatswater again, I'm going to tell Drill Sergeant." Immediately the drill sergeant walks in and goes, "Hey, what's up, Fatswater?" Who'd have thought that exposing a weakness to people who spend their lives demeaning other people could go so poorly for this man? A mother of one of the other privates sent him a photo of a drill sergeant trashing a locker, with a letter saying, "Hope your drill sergeant isn't as mean as this," smiley face. It turned out that it was a picture of our drill sergeant. He had posted that on Facebook and it ended up going viral. She was just looking up pictures of drill sergeants and it just happened to be him. A woman in my company was from Africa. She had a graduate degree in some science, so she was very smart, but some things were lost on her, especially figures of speech. When we were on the firing range, we were told to keep the rifle up and down the range, meaning no matter what way you were facing, the end of the rifle was in the air and pointed down range. She didn't get that and swung her rifle all over the place. Everyone hit the ground. One of the drill sergeants yelled and asked if her brain took a crap in her head. She didn't understand that either. When I was on Paris Island, we were drilling on the parade deck and this one recruit kept screwing up. Our drill sergeant stopped us, stalked up to the recruit and started wearing him out. Gave him the classic DI, screaming in both ears, spit flying, smacking him in the face with his cover. Eventually the recruit broke down and silent tears started streaming down his face. The DI took his finger, wiped a tear from the recruit's eye and licked it, telling the recruit, "Now I own your soul." Fricking intense. One recruit in my platoon was getting IT'd and the DI took his soul. Then, I crap you not, the recruit responded with, "What soul, sir?" The DI let him get back online. This is one of the hidden advantages of being a ginger. A cousin of mine was going through training for the Royal Australian Navy. They have leader cadets amongst their ranks, who you must refer to as leader and not sir. One of these leaders was prowling about and asked my cousin if he was all sorted out. "Yes, sir," said my cousin on reflex. "What the frick did you say, cadet? 20 push-ups right now." My cousin, you should know, is a massive crap stirrer. Couldn't help himself. "Yes, sir," he says, getting down to do the push-ups. 50 frickin' push-ups, the leader barks. The way he told the story, the timing was just perfect. "Yes, sir." So he had to do around 100 push-ups, his arms gave out around 70 apparently. Later on, they were doing open water survival training, floating around in a blow-up raft in the middle of the ocean. The leaders, who were submerged below the raft in scuba gear, would occasionally leap up and drag a cadet into the water to simulate being knocked overboard by a wave. Sure enough, the leader my cousin had crossed was under the boat. He burst out like a shark, seized my cousin by his collar, and dragged him into the freezing water. Holding him down for longer than was probably necessary, the leader eventually released him. As my cousin was climbing back into the raft, shuddering from the cold, the leader asked him, "Still think you're funny, cadet?" As you can guess, the reply was, "Yes, sir." He got grabbed and pseudo-drowned again immediately. I guess he's a glutton for punishment. He passed training, by the way. Navy man here, got a few great ones for everybody. Spring of 2011. Whole berthing in the shower together singing It's Raining Men when the RDC, the Recruit Division Commander, E4 and above, comes in and screams, "You swinging pricks got about 20 seconds before I come in and rain my boot up your butt." Large black Navy chief, E7, walks into our compartment one day and says he feels like making it rain. Oh god, please no. Then before I could get ready, he's already dropping people on the deck and making them do intense exercises. He walks up to one recruit and asks him, "Does Chief like Hennessy or Hypnotic?" "Hennessy, Chief." "Wrong, you racist. I like Jack Daniels." Then proceeds to turn up the PT on this individual. Next person. "Is Chief good at basketball or football?" Basketball?" "Wrong. Chief is good at everything." Another time we were offered ice cream for supper one Sunday. We all took ice cream because, well, we frickin' deserved it. We knew we were going to pay for it, so I got the bright idea to put all the wrappers on my tray. So we walked in a straight line to throw our trays away, and the RDCs are looking for any signs of ice cream. Then they come to me as I'm throwing away the wrappers. "Recruit, did you eat 60 frickin' ice cream bars?" "Yes, Chief, every one of them."
What is the dumbest thing you got punished for in school? Flip the monitor screen upside down, Control plus Alt plus arrow key. Got banned from using any school computer for the rest of the year. I did this by mistake once, and I told my friend about it. After I left, he decided to flip the screen and leave it that way. I got in trouble for leaving the computer in an inoperable state. They had to re-image the whole thing. I feel like I did this once when I was younger and had a meltdown because I didn't know how to get it back. Technology is hard. 6th grade, a classmate got to school without her backpack and I was the only one to notice. School started and she was looking for her bag and I told her that I saw her arrive without it. After which she started yelling at me for no reason, telling everyone that I had hid her bag. I exploded with laughter because it was funny that she was blaming me. Teachers came and sent me to the principal's office. Nobody believed me and I guess giggling didn't help. I was in detention until this kid's mom called the school and let her stupid daughter know that she forgot her backpack at home. I'm 33 now and not so long ago I saw this girl again. I went to say hello and to remind her of that day, which I still find funny. She didn't react at all to that. Yeah, you're still a jerk, Susan. Freaking Susan. In middle school, one of my friends brought Hello Kitty Band-Aids to school, and our entire friend group decided to wear them as accessories on our hands and arms because they were cute. our English teacher wrote us up and demanded that we not wear bandages for the rest of the year because he saw them as gang symbols. A Hello Kitty Band-Aid gang. I still don't understand his thought process.
Sanrio gang rise up?
Holding my pencil the wrong way. Teachers hated it. They tried those little rubber things and nothing worked. I just liked my way. I have nice handwriting, by the way. Well, this really irked my 5th grade math teacher. So she started to dock 5 points on every test or quiz I held my pencil wrong. When my father asked what this was about, I told him and he laughed and said, "Keep going." Wait a minute, you had a 5th grade math teacher? You're telling me in the 5th grade you didn't have one teacher that taught you everything? My elementary teacher once freaked out because I was holding not 1, not 2, but 3 pencils at one time. Why the hell did they even care? 4th grade, this crazy girl who was always talking to herself told me about her elaborate plan to kill the teacher. I told the teacher and got in trouble for gossiping. This OP probably got put on the crazy girl's hit list after being a snitch. Talking during lunch. The policy was a silent lunch, also with silent classroom hours, meaning the children weren't allowed to talk, which essentially gave everyone half an hour of recess to get out all that built up energy. Understandably, my 5-year-old self was not down with that. We were in the process of being dismissed anyways. It technically counted as recess time. I have a somewhat common sounding name. However, I only ever really encountered 2 people with my name. One of them was in middle school. He was black. I'm white. One time I got called to the principal's office for something that had happened on the bus on the way to school. I wasn't a bus rider. All the other students involved were black. One look at me and the principal knew it wasn't me, so I was dismissed. The next year, I decided to cut class with a couple of friends. We just took off running across the field, which was behind the cafeteria at the end of lunch. As we ran, one of the administrators saw us, and another friend of ours was close by. Pretty sure he got grilled and ratted us out. My 2 other friends got suspended, but I never heard a peep. I suspect the opposite thing happened. The black kid with my name got called in, and they obviously knew he wasn't involved. Dude, this could be a sitcom. You guys could live together and get into wacky antics and social misunderstandings. Instead of Everybody Loves Raymond, we can call it Everybody Loves Racism. Being left-handed on the first day of 1st grade. The teacher took away my pencil and made me use my right hand. When my mother picked me up, I told her what happened. She talked to the principal, who apologized, and then called in the teacher to make her apologize. The rest of the school year was very tense. Another event that occurred to me. I got a day of internal suspension in high school for having an overdue library book. I had returned it on time, but the librarian put it on the wrong cart and it was shelved without being scanned back in. I know this because a few days after I returned the book, I saw it on the shelf. I still had to pay the overdue book fine. Dude, I wasn't permitted to graduate college until I returned or paid for a book I only had for 24 hours. Plus late fees because the library lost it. I very much feel your pain. Refusing to dance in kindergarten. We were doing some activity that involved dancing. I didn't want to, and I convinced a friend of mine to join me in protest. So they sent me to the principal's office and called my mom. Damn the man. Dude, this OP was trying to unionize in kinder. Hugging a friend of mine. School had a no PDA rule and they cracked down on it hard. I had just seen my friend for the first time after winter break. I gave her a hug for like a second. I was also female. Teacher saw it and threw a fit and I would end up talking to the principal. Good thing the principal was a smart lady. She let me and my friend off with a warning and I never hugged anyone in school ever again. Did this school happen to be in Florida? Because it gives off Florida vibes. Started a huge conga line my senior year. One morning, I went to my locker and was talking to my friends. We decided to start a conga line for some stupid reason. I was in the front, so I led us down the hallway. I started to point at people and told them to join the party. I told them to invite anybody that they knew. I led us through the cafeteria, through the gym, and when I decided to walk to the principal's office, a teacher stopped us and said that the conga line was a fire hazard since it had gotten so long. I told them that that was dumb, and if there was a fire, we'd conga right out of the school. They gave me a good talking to for being a smart butt. Also, I was going to get paddled by the principal for fighting. He told me that he liked me, so he was only going to give me 1 paddling. I told him if he liked me, he should give me 2. I got suspended for that one. I would be shocked if this OP wasn't the class clown, because these posts were hilarious. In 5th grade, we were starting an assignment. The TA was going around passing out papers we needed. I was going through my pencil case, kind of mumbling a supply checklist to myself. Pencil, sharpener, eraser. She handed me the sheet and I say, paper. She looks at me all weirdly and walks away. Don't know what that was about, but I just start working. About a minute later, the teacher walks up to me and says I have to stay for detention at recess. What? Reason being, the TA thought I said payback, apparently as in there will be payback for giving me this paper, I guess? It was completely stupid. I explained myself and they just weren't having it. We argued until lunch, and I was getting increasingly pissed off to the point where I was on the verge of tears. Eventually, everyone left, and the teacher said, "Okay, I believe you. I don't think that you'd be this upset if you weren't telling the truth. Just apologize and you can go out with the rest of the class." That pissed me off even more, and I asked what I was supposed to apologize for. Just say that you're sorry that we misunderstood you, then you can go play. I took the detention. Hell yeah, I love taking a stand. My elementary days are becoming a bit more foggy as I get older, but I definitely remember being a kid that talked back when a teacher didn't make sense. Definitely got sent to the principal a couple of times too. Cracking my back. The teacher wrote me up for doing gymnastics in class and sent me to the principal. He laughed and asked if I did a barrel roll. I had to have it signed by my parents as well, who also laughed. It was funny for everybody, but at the end of the day, I was still stuck on a Saturday morning doing stupid work. I'm still bitter about it. Reading during class. They were teaching us how to open a Word document. The detention was lunch detention. They assumed that me, a lonely little 6th grader, would be in agony by not eating in the lunchroom, but instead a quiet room. I just happily ate my lunch and read my book more. A woman yelled at me in college about sleeping in her class. I was in an intro to computer class. I had taken every computer class in high school, including Cisco networking and 4 years of Microsoft Office. I explained this and she was still upset that I had finished all of her work for her day in 10 minutes. It was making a super simple PowerPoint, and I decided to nap because the class was at 8 in the freaking morning. Man, must be nice to have computer classes for 4 years of high school. I think we had just one computer class for the 4 years, and just so happened to use computers in other random classes. My senior year of high school, power went out and neither my mom's nor my alarm went off. This was 30 years ago. No cell phone alarms. Neither one of us woke up in time to get me to school on time. She brought me in late with a note saying that it wasn't my fault that I was late. They gave me detention for an unexcused tardy. I go off that it wasn't unexcused, that I had a note that said I wasn't the cause for being late. The office person said that the note wasn't a valid excuse. I say something along the lines of, "So you're telling me that if I had lied and said that I had a doctor's appointment, I would be fine?" She says yes. I tell her that that's BS and all they're doing is telling people to lie instead of tell the truth. She says something along the lines of, "Someday I'll learn that telling the truth is its own reward and that lying has its own consequences." To which I said, "But those consequences aren't a detention." I was furious. I went to the phones at school, pay phones by the way, and called my mom at work. Told her the story, and an hour later I got called back to the office because apparently my mom had written the wrong thing on the note. I was at a doctor's appointment that morning, so I didn't have to serve a detention. In the 4th grade, I drew a picture of Link from Zelda and included a crappy portrayal of the Master Sword. Went to the principal's office and they called my parents. Sounds like you drew Link's other Master Sword. It must have been 1st or 2nd grade. I was sitting with the kid on the bus to school that I got along with. We weren't great friends, but we would talk on the way to school. I have no clue what started this convo, but he started asking me if I thought a grenade would blow up the bus. Well, I guess so. What about an RPG? I guess. A tank definitely could. That wasn't verbatim, but you get the gist. It was some kid just idly daydreaming probably about Call of Duty or something. I do remember that to this day I was reading when that convo started. I replied with nothing other than, "Yeah, that makes sense," or "I guess." We both were suspended from riding the bus for a week. Oh boy, here we go. I was playing Mario Kart DS with my friends on the bus in either 4th or 5th grade. Suddenly, like 4 bombs just fell on me at once. And I turned around and told my friend sitting in the back seat behind me what had happened after he asked what my exasperated "oh no" was for. I'm greeted at the school by a majority of the security guards and forcibly escorted to the principal's office for threatening to drop bombs on the school. I bet this kid hit the bus driver with the blue shell and this was his revenge. English class in the 10th grade. We had a test on a book that we were supposed to be reading. The entire test was short answer, and I had literally not read a single word of this book, meaning it would be next to impossible for me to guess any of the correct answers. When the teacher was passing out the exams, I politely said to her, "I'm sorry, but I didn't read at all, so you just have to keep that paper." She told me that she was very disappointed and asked me at least to write my name on the test so that she knew that I was present that day. I wrote my name at the top in pen. According to the syllabus in that class, using a pen on any of the assignments results in -2 points on the grade. I received a -2 on that test. I would have performed better by staying home that day. Man, that teacher was petty. Got yelled at in the 6th grade. I was bused to a bad neighborhood by the guard watching us on the playground for being on the sidewalk, not the blacktop. I said, "Okay, sorry," and I did a little wave. She detained me and drilled me. "What gang sign did you just throw at me?" I was this little 10-year-old white Mormon girl and didn't even know what a gang sign was. My name is spelled with an AH in the middle, which is usually for said name to be spelled for female variant. In year 7, a teacher went off on me when I was writing on the front of a book saying that that wasn't my name and she spelled it wrong on purpose. Cue a very long argument I lost, which resulted in me having to write lines of the spelling without the H in my lunch break, while the teacher berated me for lying about something I wasn't actually lying about. This reminds me of a sub we had that wouldn't believe my classmate's name was Gideon. That's an older name, sure, but it's perfectly normal and biblical even. The sub flipped the freak out, thought everyone was messing with her that was his name, and he got sent down to the principal. There was this kid in my class with obvious behavioral problems, but the school didn't do jack crap to help him. One day at recess, some other kids were playing keep away with his hat. He has a total meltdown and just starts attacking one of the kids, throwing punches, kicking, screaming. Trying to defuse the situation, I walk up behind him and I get him in a bear hug so he stops punching this kid in the face and just keeps saying, "Calm down." At that moment, I hear a teacher screaming my name. I turn and see her watching from a window. A minute later, she comes running outside yelling at me and drags me to the principal's office. My parents are called and I have to have a conference with the teacher, principal, my mom, the other kid, and his parents. Nothing I say matters because the teacher saw me beating this kid up from the window. I ended up with detention, had to apologize to this kid and his parents, and was suspended from the basketball team. I was in the 4th grade. Prior to being dropped off at school by my dad, I had discovered an old school Lego spear. You know, the little brown ones? And a rubber band. I had likewise discovered if you stretched the rubber band around the length of the spear and then pulled slightly on it, you could make a square shape with the spear propping up 2 of the corners. This is amazing, I thought to myself. I conveniently forgot that if you pull the sides of the rubber band too much, then the spear goes flying. So I brought my new square maker toy to show all my friends, and they were about as impressed as you are all reading this. We're waiting in line to go to one of the classes, and I'm showing my friends, and lo and behold, the spear flies out of the rubber band and hits my teacher in the glasses. She just stares at me, I stare at her, and she says, "Go to the principal's office." I find out later that she claims that I attempted to kill her. The principal just laughed while all 3 of us were in the office, and she told me that she had to call my dad and he had to come in. The principal relayed the story, and now my dad's laughing too. I think that teacher was onto something. Kids can be stone cold killers. Yelling no loudly. I was in the 4th or 5th grade. The teacher asked if we wanted to play a game no one liked. Everyone was like, "No." And I guess I yelled. I didn't even realize I was louder than the other kids, and I was very confused when I got in trouble. I was sent to sit in a little cubicle near the classroom. The teacher forgot me and they all went to lunch and some other teacher found me there, crying alone in the dark. And then in high school, the teacher said no talking and the kid next to me asked me a question. And before I could even tell him to shut up, I got detention. He didn't though. I had to copy an essay about how I would bring my letter grade up by paying attention in class. I had straight A's. Another time, in maybe the 7th grade, my friend kept throwing my Hobbit book across the lunchroom, and when I went to go get it, she would bump me off the edge of the bench onto the floor when I tried to sit down. So she goes to throw it again and I grab her wrist to stop her and she starts crying and we both got detention, which I thought was really unfair considering she was bullying me and had literally knocked me to the ground. From my experience, bullies never got in trouble. I got yelled at for consulting an encyclopedia. No formal punishment, the teacher just knew she was wrong and I was about to look up the correct answer. I tell this story too damn much, but here I go. In the 4th grade, we were required to keep a journal. It was an English lesson thing. One time, I wrote about my passion at the time, which was insects, and about something that I had learned, which was insect camouflage. The teacher underlined every instance of camouflage and wrote that I spelled it incorrectly. She wrote it spelled CAMOFLAGUE. I was like, what the freak? No, it isn't. I knew this because I didn't know how to spell the damn word, and I had to use a dictionary. And when I looked it up, it was spelled the way I thought it was. I showed the teacher and she insisted the dictionary was wrong. So I got my friend's dictionary, and once again, it was spelled camouflage. CAMOUFLAGE. She insisted that his dictionary was also wrong and that she was correct. I was mad, so I brought a completely different, brand new freaking dictionary to school, where it was spelled the way I thought. She snapped and said if I didn't drop the issue, I would get detention. I dropped it, but I should have kept fighting for it. To her credit, I still remember how to correctly spell camouflage. Kissing my girlfriend. Someone in the house across the street saw, called the school, and I was suspended for a few days. This didn't happen at school, but I got caught by my neighbor feeling up my girlfriend when we were both in the 8th grade outside my house. I just heard this loud knocking from the neighbor's window and we both got super embarrassed. But hey, still touched some honkers. Some jerk of a kid thought it would be funny to attack me out of the blue. I ended up with a sprained wrist and some broken ribs and he was totally fine. I got a week of in-school suspension and he got away scot-free. It was in the 1960s. I was a straight A student. When asked my opinion about a book in class I was reading, I admitted that I thought it was boring. I got 10 lashes with a leather strap on each hand and a month of after-school detention. I had some kid prepared to hit me in the face with the football. I decided to grab his arm and take the football out of his hand. Another kid then took the ball and threw it at him. He went off and cried saying that I hit him and threw the football at him. Everyone in class took the stance of no snitching, and I got suspended because no one would verify my side of the story. So much for defending myself. This was the 6th grade. I got into an argument with the kid who bullied me a lot. So I told him, at least my parents like each other. His parents were divorced. Jerk move, I know. But this kid was also a huge jerk. Anyways, he gets pissed and leaves. I think, finally, he'll leave me alone. He returns with a big rock and bashes me in the head with it. I'm knocked out and have to get carried back to the nurse's office by another kid, leaving a trail of blood. It required a few stitches. So I get suspended for 3 days and 1 day of in-school suspension for bullying. The other kid went home for half the day. I have had a few situations in my public school life, but that made me lose complete faith in the administration. My buddy tackled me out of the blue and we both got in trouble for roughhousing. Understandable, but when we both told the powers that be that I had nothing to do with it and that he had tackled me out of nowhere for no reason, I remained in trouble because I hadn't dodged the attack. No joke.
What happened at a wedding that let you know the marriage was going to end in a divorce? The groom looked drunk and the bride seemed incredibly angry. Then there was this woman walking around during the reception placing bets on when they would divorce. I later found out she was the mother of the groom. The groom said in his speech, "When I joined a dating agency, I never thought I'd be so lucky as to find my own personal cook, dishwasher, and washing machine. Not only is that a crappy way to describe anyone, he's in for a nasty surprise when he realizes his wife is actually a complete diva and will expect him to do all those things for her. Bad relationship all around." Groom's mistress found out he was getting married and showed up at the wedding, in the middle of the I do's, walked right up on stage and smacked him in the face, pulling a Will Smith slap before the Will Smith slap even happened. The groom stabbed his new brother-in-law to death with the knife used to cut the wedding cake, no less. Well, technically it happened at the reception, not the wedding. Yeah, like that's a detail I was worried about and not the fact that somebody was stabbed to death at a wedding. Backstory. About 4 years before the wedding, the wife's brother had shot her in the leg during an argument. Yes, alcohol was involved. At the reception, he started loudly telling the guests that he wished he'd shot her in the head instead, at which point the groom got stabby. Alcohol was, again, involved. At the rehearsal dinner, the groom's mom is in tears because he looks miserable. And he was. We all knew it. During the vows they had written for each other, the bride starts with, "I know I could be a pretty terrible person, and I don't know why you've stuck around, but that's all going to change starting today." They were divorced a year later. She flinched when he turned to kiss her. They were divorced within 6 months. The bride had the minister put "till death or divorce do us part" into the ceremony. My cousin, the bride, told us as she was going from table to table thanking the guests that she didn't think it would last. We were stunned. They lasted about a year. I thought my sister's wedding was. Her husband got blackout drunk and they got into an argument. He passed out and she ended up throwing a bucket of ice water in his face to snap him out of it. She was devastated about it. Happy ending? He made it up to her big time. Also, he felt very out of it, even the next day. Turns out he had traces of Rohypnol in his system. His own brother roofied him in hopes he wouldn't marry my sister because he wanted their own friendship to remain the same. My brother-in-law has disowned most of his family because of this, and his brother just got out of a 4-year prison sentence. The bride, whom I didn't even know, apparently designated me to help decorate the reception hall prior to the wedding. I went to do so, and her mother was there telling me in a hushed, scared whisper that I better not mess anything up because the bride would be furious. Everything was to be a certain way, and if it was wrong, there'd be hell to pay. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, chalked it up to wedding anxiety, and during the reception, I tried to chat with her a bit, and she literally rolled her eyes at me. I also didn't see her look at the groom once at the wedding or the reception. They were split less than a year later. Later, the groom confided to me and my husband that the morning of the wedding, he'd been filled with an overwhelming feeling of dread and spent several hours just sitting on his lawn thinking, I shouldn't do this. But it was paid for, tons of guests were waiting, lots of family, including us, had come in from out of state, and he felt he had to go through with it. Apparently, the bride had a history of being awful and controlling. No clue what made him propose to her in the first place. Edit. Just Facebook stalked the ex-bride. Her latest status update is announcing her wedding date with a new guy. Someone jokingly asked in the comments if they set a date for the divorce. Oh snap! Holy crap. My cousin Jan's wedding was basically just a preamble to an elaborate dance of divorce that we all knew was coming from the moment the engagement began. For context, this took place 15 years ago in the backwoods of North Carolina. My family is just a generation or two removed from snake handling in church, so some of the wackiness is the product of upwardly mobile inbreeding and redneck gumption. Just a few things that come to mind. Her fiancé proposed to her over the corpse of her father. He was over with the family watching TV when Jan's dad collapsed on the floor. He died before emergency services arrived. Her boyfriend grabbed her hands as she was sitting next to her father's body, pulled her up to her feet, and then asked her to marry him. He later said that he didn't want her to get away. The fiancé then disappeared for a month the week after the funeral. Nobody knew where to find him. The bride's white trash mother told Jan that she had to get married within 4 months because she, the mother, my aunt, planned to move to another state with her new boyfriend to avoid bill collectors. When Jan's fiancé showed back up, he was cagey and weird. Eventually, it came out that he'd been living with his ex-girlfriend because she insisted that he had to give to her a month of his life or she'd take him to court for child support that he was supposed to be paying on their infant son, but had never paid. Throughout all of this, Jan continued to insist that she wanted to marry him. My mother and I did most of the wedding prep and arrangements. Jan's mom, despite insisting on the 4-month timeline to help pay for the wedding before her move, never contributed a dime. And we were both pretty convinced that the wedding was going to be canceled at any moment. But the day arrived, and so did the principal players. At the wedding itself, the groom walked around drinking PBR out of a massive travel thermos with a novelty straw and told everyone who would listen that Jan was a good starter wife. Jan threw several tantrums about stupid stuff, including one in which she accused the groom of stealing her drink. He told her she was a dumb woman, but it all worked out because she then found her drink. The groom pulled the ring off of Jan's finger during the reception and swallowed it as a joke. The groom picked a fight with his father because his dad had asked the ex-girlfriend to stay at home, and the groom had really wanted her to be there. Jan was in the dark about this invitation until the fight broke out. Epilogue, shocking precisely nobody, except possibly Jan herself, they eventually did divorce. Eating the ring caused the groom some discomfort, so they had to cancel their honeymoon to the mountains so that he could go to the ER and get hospital-grade laxatives. They lost money on the cancellation and the ER visit, which they really didn't have to lose. That resulted in some immediate debt problems, and they lost the trailer they planned to rent when they couldn't come up with a deposit. That resulted in both of them moving into the groom's parents' home into his old bedroom. Things went downhill from there. The groom's ex-girlfriend popped back up less than 3 months after the wedding, heavily pregnant with a second child. She went after him for another shared month, but Jan wasn't cool with it. The ex ended up taking him to court for child support. Jan got a second job to make ends meet while resigning herself to living with her in-laws for a while longer. One day, after he dropped her off at work, the groom sold Jan's car. He then disappeared for several more weeks. She lost both jobs and shortly thereafter realized she was pregnant. The groom accused her of cheating because he thought he couldn't have more than 2 children in a lifetime, and his ex-girlfriend had already filled the quota. As I understand it, this is what ultimately caused the rift in their relationship. Back to normal stories. Groom got caught getting frisky with the bridesmaid. That marriage lasted for about 2 hours. When the father of the bride tells the groom, "How can you marry somebody like her? You are too nice. You deserve better." Surely enough, the marriage lasted less than 3 years. During the whole time, the wife was doing drugs and prostituted herself to get money for drugs. We knew the couple was in trouble when they frowned during most of the ceremony and later didn't go on a honeymoon because they couldn't agree on a destination. They had plenty of money, just no desire to compromise. At the end of the reception, the guys are sitting at a table away from everyone else talking, and we asked the groom why he proposed. His answer? Because she was naked. Marriage lasted about 1.5 years. At my brother's wedding, his bride gave him the cheek at the "you may kiss the bride" part. Yeah, she ended up cheating on him with some guy online in less than a year. My sister's new husband made out with the bridesmaid on the dance floor of the reception. During the ceremony, when the priest started asking the bride, "Do you take this man to be your..." she started laughing uncontrollably and couldn't stop. It was cute for about 10 seconds and then things got real uncomfortable. They lasted 1 year and change. We all kinda knew the only reason they were getting married was because she got pregnant. Groom got so drunk at the reception he passed out in the honeymoon suite by himself, but not before he latched the door so it couldn't be unlocked from the outside. Seeing the bride kicking the door and hollering at the top of her lungs to be let in at 3 a.m. was not encouraging. They divorced like 2 years later. I was working at a wedding factory. On Monday, we got a call the Saturday wedding was canceled. They were told that they would lose the deposit, around $7,000. Then on Thursday, they said it was back on. When the guests arrived, everyone was mad. It seems they told everyone that it was off, then 2 days later that it was on. The ceremony was about 3 minutes. The bride then changed into sweatpants and then everyone got angry drunk. Well, this won't last long, I thought. Then on the following Monday, the bride walked into my then-wife's divorce attorney's office. Our friend was the girl who had spent a whole year setting up for the one day. They had taken 6 months of dancing lessons, and she has spent a ridiculous amount of time looking good and dressing up her bridesmaids for the wedding, of which my wife was one. So, come the night of the wedding, the groom meets up with his old friends and starts to get blackout drunk. He got so drunk he didn't even recognize us, rather just pushing us aside to get to the bathroom. The worst part was the dance itself. It was really heartbreaking to see them stumble around and watch the panic on her face as he realized he had no idea what was going on. I gave it 6 months at the time, but they ended up 3 years. She ended up marrying another woman. Groom mashed the cake into the pregnant bride's face so hard she went down backwards. Groom and his father ended up fistfighting in the bathroom, cops were called, fun times. It was a shotgun wedding. They proudly proclaimed it as such. Overheard the bride's mother saying that the bride was such a later bloomer for waiting until 19 to trap herself a man. The child is 3 years old and they have been separated, don't know if divorced, since she was 1. Walking in on the groom getting railed by one of the groomsmen in the suite at the resort during the reception. My cousin's wedding. The groom invited his ex, who was also the mother of his 1-year-old son. He and my cousin had been dating for longer than 2 years, and my cousin, who was then very pregnant herself, got into a loud screaming match with him over it in a bathroom. They eventually came out and got married, my cousin with puffy red eyes from crying that you can see in every wedding photo that was taken. They spent $50,000 on a Disney wedding and the bride spent 0 time anywhere near the in-laws for several hours. She ran off a week later. While saying the classic "I do," instead of looking deep into his bride's eyes, the groom was peeking at one of the bridesmaids. I do audio-visual for social events, a lot of weddings. At one engagement party, my coworker tells the story of the soon-to-be groom trying to carry off his soon-to-be bride, because he's manly and will have his way with her. Anyways, she is screaming at him to put her down, and when he finally complies, she slaps him right across the face and yells, "I'm not done dancing!" When I was 17, I was a bridesmaid in my 19-year-old cousin's shotgun wedding. After the ceremony, we got into the limo to go to the reception. She turns to me and says, "God, I wish I was single." The groom didn't look at the bride once. Sister's wedding. Husband ends speech saying, "Thanks for settling for me." 18 months later, agreed to divorce. 4 people made speeches. The bride joked about the first time she dated the groom when she was 16 and he was 26. The groom was wasted and spoke about how each of the previous times they broke up didn't count and that they would do it right this time. The maid of honor talked about how even when they were broken up they still got along, and the best man made crappy jokes. Groom's brother didn't attend because he too had banged the bride before. The groom invited his female friend. She was in the early stages of pregnancy. Towards the end of the night, the bride asked aforementioned friend who the father was. The friend cheerfully said the groom's name. The bride got blackout drunk and asked me to kill her husband. He was busy fighting one of his groomsmen in the other room. They divorced 2 years later. The day of her wedding, I asked my sister-in-law if she was enjoying her day, and all she said was, "It's a freaking nightmare. This is the worst day of my life." Dude said the wrong name at the altar. When I read this one, I went, uh-oh. I was reunited with a family member just before her wedding. We went out drinking, and she proudly pointed out a guy at the bar that she'd just gone on a trip with and had a week-long prenup rail romp. She seemed to think I'd think that was naughty and funny. I just felt bad for her future husband, but figured it was just a bad choice. The day of the wedding, I went to see her in the bridal suite. She had the guy there with him. She screwed him the night before the wedding. They lasted a few years, but it was a miserable few. My cousin married a nice, respectable girl from Connecticut, but he is a not-so-nice, not-so-respectable Massachusetts stereotype from Norfolk County. Cuz got drunk with his band of Mickeys and Sullys the night before, and when I saw him for pictures that morning, he was sucking on a pint of Skull vodka before throwing it in the corner of the church and calling his friend a slur. He had the same grin on his face for every picture. I pumped some coffee into him. We thought we had it under control, but during the ceremony, he flipped off the guest twice. His brother also taped "Help Me" on the bottom of his shoes for when they took the mass. The bride's father was furious. But then came the reception. My mom didn't want to go. I wish we hadn't. Cuz continued sucking down booze, as did his pals. The bride, God save her, wanted to go ahead with the first dance, Stand By Me. Cuz didn't put down his drink, was grabbing her butt during the dance, and finally spilled it all down her dress. She slapped him, he pushed her. Father of the groom charges the dance floor. The bench is clear. My brother and I ask Mom if she wants us to get involved. She grabs her purse and says, "Let's leave." As his buddies were holding Cuz back, she walked over, slapped him, and said, "Thank God your grandmother died, you disgraceful little Mick." Mama is a very quiet woman. We grabbed Mama and hightailed it out. 2 cops passed us on the way in. They began the annulment 1 week later. I haven't talked to him since, although he emailed me asking if he could borrow $5,000. He lives in a camper from what I hear. Friend got married. On his honeymoon, his wife went to the spa. He stayed in the room to chill. Housekeeping came, young cute girl. Friend paid her for head. Told me about all proud. Didn't last a year. Toward the end of the reception, the bride suggested to the groom he run home and change into street clothes so they could clean the venue and get the deposit returned. Groom got back, and bride had opened all the gift envelopes and paid back relatives with the cash they contained. Source: the groom was me. I was in charge of choosing a male strip club for the bachelorette party. I went to check a place out. Bumped into the groom in the audience. We've got a timeline for this one. A bunch of my family members are betting on how long one of my cousin's marriage would last. It's definitely going to end in divorce, but we just don't know when. Here's all the crap that happened. Pre-wedding, the couple can't even agree on invitation card designs, so they decided each would have their own. Some people received 2 invitations. Wedding. They're both from different races, and the groom's family insisted on having a wedding ceremony from their culture too. The bride refused the part where she has to kneel before her husband and wash his feet clean. The groom's family insisted, and she was stuck doing it. The bride got tired with all the photo taking and refused to pose for any more photographs, even though she hadn't taken photos with the groom's extended family. Meanwhile, she had already taken photos with her entire family, extended family, and parents' friends. The groom's cousin told the bride she walked in elegantly and she spent hours crying and refusing to come out for the wedding dinner. Half the groom's family boycotted the wedding over the bride's race and religion. Post-wedding, the bride insisted they should fly first class for their honeymoon. The groom insisted it's a waste of money, even though they had both come from money. The bride flew first class, the groom stuck to economy. Wedding was going okay until the bride and groom got hammered, groom's baby mama ex showed up, and the bride proceeded to lock herself in a room crying and continuing to drink by herself. It was a crap show to say the least. OP says, "How long do you wait to leave in a scenario like that?" I wasn't there, but my neighbor is a wedding DJ. Apparently a couple of weeks ago, she was at a wedding where the bride did her first dance with her ex, who for some reason was invited, because he was a better dancer than her new husband, and she didn't want to get, in her words, shown up. My cousin got his casual hookup pregnant, and somehow they came to the conclusion that they needed to get married. Instead of going and getting quietly married, they decided they needed a gigantic, expensive wedding. Like 5-course meal, 300 plus guests, 12 bridesmaids kind of wedding. Obviously, something like this takes a while to plan, and as a result, she was about 7 months pregnant. Now, nothing wrong with going down the aisle while expecting, but she chose this corseted dress that was cinched so tight it nearly flattened her bump out. As someone who has been pregnant, I can't imagine how uncomfortable that must have been. The fact that they had only known each other 8 months and she was 7 months pregnant was like the elephant in the room the entire wedding. She refused to acknowledge the fact that she was pregnant. She had been out of college for 10 plus years and invited all her sorority sisters. They got up and all sang this weird sorority song together. Very odd for an over 30 woman. I'm probably not explaining it very well, but it was like she was trying to act like she was much younger. They were married about 4 years, way longer than anyone thought it would last. Married less than a year, and a mutual friend my wife and I had got married. During the ceremony, my wife is crying and I asked her why, expecting a response of happy for him or something, and she said, "I always thought I will be the one to marry him." She ended up cheating on me with him and we went our separate ways. They only got married because they screwed unprotected on their first date and conceived a child. Fast forward a few months, the bride objects to going to the groom's friend for flowers for the wedding because she has a religious objection to the gay lifestyle, in quotes. Turns out she's also incredibly racist. The groom is not homophobic or racist at all and was appalled to find out that his new wife wouldn't approve of most of his friends. The baby hasn't even been born yet and the divorce is pending. The groom saying the bride looked really chubby in her wedding dress. The groom making fun of the deaf grandmother. The groom existing. Not all of it was at the wedding, but on our way to our honeymoon, we were on a flight with this couple sitting behind us. She boarded the plane with a giant carry-on and a garment bag with a dress in it. Once they found their seats, she shoved her bags at him to put away, and then went to use the lavatory for about 15 minutes. She was really nasty towards him the whole time. Fast forward into running into them at the resort. She was super stuck up and a jerk to every female and all the staff. She didn't seem to have a problem grinding on 4 or 5 different guys during one of the dance night themed events while her husband drank alone at the bar. Finally, the day of their wedding came, and my husband ran into the groom sitting alone outside of the cafe with a drink in his hand. He sat down to chat with him, and the guy explained that he was freaking out because they had no friends or family at the wedding, because literally no one that knew him liked her or approved of the wedding, and that he wasn't even sure what he was doing there. My husband tells him he's sure it's cold feet, and to just have a drink to calm his nerves. The groom replies that it's his 5th drink. It's like 11 a.m. already. We had an oceanfront villa and they got married right outside of our back door. He looked like he was going to bolt for sure. I guess that was her plan the whole time, trap him on a remote island. Her vows. They were friends of mine who dated for nearly 2 years before their wedding. He loved her more than she loved him, obvious to all our friends, and we suspected she begrudgingly said yes to his proposal. He said his vows first and went on and on about loving her for the rest of his life. During hers, she started with 438 days. That's how long I've loved you. It seemed sweet until she ended her vows with, and I promise to love you for at least 438 more. Most thought nothing of it, and some friends called me a jerk for saying it was a subconscious sign that she wasn't in it for the long haul. She left him exactly that amount of days after the wedding, with the note that said, "I kept my vow to love you for 438 days more, but I can't for a single day more." Called it. At the wedding, bride-to-be turns up 30 minutes late, arrives inconsolably sobbing, helped down the aisle. Ceremony weird and filled with cries from the bride. Afterwards, spoke to the bride's father and asked how things were. His response, well, that was like getting a cat in a paper bag. Divorced 3 months later. Backstory, the groom, whom we knew, was from a wealthy family. Bride's family saw money and persuaded their darling daughter to marry the guy. She realized the mistake. She ended up with nothing. His family had money, but the groom was young and had nothing. Screwed up people out here, folks.
Gentlemen, what's the biggest "I'm a princess" red flag? "I don't like cheap stuff" is always a dead giveaway. Also, mothers and sometimes fathers, depending on things. If your girl is BFFs with her mum, she'll end up like her in 20 years. It's like a freaking time capsule sometimes. My bro's wife is like this. The worst sign is when she's BFFs with her crazy witch mother, but only when they're apart. If they can't stand each other and argue all the time when they're together, but talk on the phone constantly when they're apart, run, mother fricker. This B-word is crazy. Oh, you can take it, you're a guy. My best friend's ex would literally shove him around without even warning him to vent her unrelated bad mood. Would be annoyed with his protests because she was significantly smaller than him and men can take it. Didn't change the fact that shoving someone into a wall or a chair literally just because you feel like it is as straightforward abusive as you can get. The entitlement of it all. Lack of awareness of the plight of the proletariat and the subjugation of archaic feudal hierarchies. Come and see the violence inherent in the system. And now, a flag I had never even considered or encountered, and that is apparently a very common one. I'm a woman, but I've noticed women who are obsessed with Marilyn Monroe are usually terrible in a variety of ways. Frick. This hits hard. I dated a girl for a while in high school. She was fun, had a great sense of humor, and she was absolutely gorgeous. It was high school, and crap happens. We broke up after a little less than a year. Fast forward to 22-year-old me at Walmart in the middle of the night buying bullcrap snacks after work, and who do I see in line? Awesome girl from high school. She's with some guy who I assume is her boyfriend. We talk a little in line, and I head home. By the time I get home, I have a text that just says, "He's not my boyfriend, by the way." And that's when I knew that I should pursue this again. We went on our first date and it was just like high school. She was still amazing and I realized that my feelings for her seemed as if they hadn't dulled in the slightest. Everything seemed perfect. I learned that 1, she had gotten her nips pierced, and so I didn't really focus on number 2, which was that she had a portrait of Marilyn Monroe tattooed on her waist with a dermal piercing for the beauty mark. I thought, that's weird, but those are great. Little did I know that there was a pot of crazy brewing underneath all of it. We dated for less than 2 months when she told me that she didn't want to be together anymore. I was upset, but after talking about our relationship and our feelings, I told her that I understood. A couple of days later, I get a phone call. She is teed off, screaming at me about how much I hurt her. I'm confused, to say the least. She tells me that breaking up with me was a test. I was supposed to fight for her. She wanted to see if we were meant for each other. Needless to say, I blocked her phone number and haven't looked back since. Mail here. Ex loved Marilyn. Ditched me for some guy who made more money. Apartment building caught on fire. She stole a Marilyn Monroe painting from the apartment next to ours and half my insurance check. She wouldn't sign off on it unless I gave her half. Happened days after she took all of her crap and moved out. Yes, I fought and did my homework. No win situation. She even went on to stop responding to me when I had $1,000 worth of checks I needed her to sign for my expense reimbursement. The insurance company got to keep the money. I had a brief phase where I felt I related to her and people called me Marilyn. Can confirm, I was a mess at the time. Over the winter, I worked with a girl who would say to everyone, "Girls hate me because I'm cute and I steal their boyfriends." I tried to avoid her after that. Girls hate you because you're a B-word. When her mother says, "Boys just flock around her like bees around honey," she agrees with a big smile. Respect for her brother responding with, "You mean like flies around crap?" My wife's maiden name was King. She maintains that she is a princess by definition. Can't argue with her logic. Based on your working, I assume that she changed her name when she married you. By that logic, you could argue that she abdicated. I was dating this girl that absolutely loved KFC's fried chicken. While she was in the shower one time, I decided to run to KFC and surprise her with a quick little meal. I did not get mashed potatoes, never really cared for their take on mashed taters. She threw me out upon finding there were no mashed potatoes. Threw me out. Talks about how much she hates the $200 marble iPhone case her mum bought her. Constantly calls her brand new MacBook Pro a piece of crap because she doesn't know how to use it, then proceeds to throw it to the ground and drop it all the time. Breaks the $200 marble iPhone case. Excited when mum buys her a new one. Yeah, I didn't stick around. Girls are too much drama, that's why I only have guy friends. I hate drama, princess who proceeds to cause all sorts of drama. I think it's a fairly good, if not universal indicator that if any person, male or female, tends to push away their friends, they may not be great at relationships either. Refusing to do something on the grounds that she's too good for it. Not taking out the garbage, cleaning a bathtub, whatever. Nobody's too good to be humble and helpful. Anybody who thinks they are is a butthole. A girl that was in my friends group got really angry when I talked about potentially moving houses, and I said that I would ask everyone, including her, for some help. Pizzas and beer guaranteed, of course. She went bat crap crazy about how girls do not do these kinds of things, and it's rude to even think about asking her. The other girls were livid, referring to herself as a princess, or, "I can really be a diva, but cutesy smirk, gotta love me." No, I do not. The only time "gotta love me" is acceptable for anyone to say is if they're a pink baby dinosaur. After going out a few times, she said, "Man, I've gone so overboard spending lately. Hey, can you take care of my credit card debt for me?" Me, silent, looking at her oddly, trying to decide if this is a bad joke. "I mean, you could be a sugar daddy, couldn't you?" Me, "No, I'm not that old yet, nor wealthy, and I wouldn't be even if I were." "You don't want to be my sugar daddy?" That was the end of that relationship. I could maybe be your aspartame daddy, that's about it. I prefer the term splendor daddy. This happened to me, went out once, worst date ever. Ended the night without even a handshake. Made no plans. She texted me to ask to borrow $500 a couple of times. One of my best friends had a girlfriend once say she likes to have nicer things than other people, but doesn't want to work, so he needs to have a good job. Same girl also said she should come before family and God. I'm not religious, but that's still pretty nuts for people who are, which they were. Throwing a tantrum and being teed off at your boyfriend for not proposing the right way. Knew a girl who did this exact thing. We have a tradition at our university where you propose under this huge tree on campus. Only some people do it, not everyone. She literally threw a tantrum even though he planned a sweet proposal that would have pleased any other girl just because he didn't do it under the fricking tree. Usually having princess written across the rear of their pink sweatpants is a dead giveaway. In the 90s, it was a big trend to have princess written down one leg of the track pants. I made myself a pair in black with smack whore written down the side in red letters in the princess font. I'm starting to remember why my parents considered me to be such a huge disappointment. Lady who wrote that comment, thank you. This is a wonderful example of how to subvert a trend, and we're all better off for it. I once dated a girl who had a dad that bought her everything. He made a lot of money and was really great at saving it. His life's mission was to use that money to buy his B-word daughter's love. She was 22 and had her car paid for in full, insurance, phone bill, rent-free living, yada yada. For her birthday every year, she would get $1,000 in cash. I, on the other hand, was 23 at the time and paid for everything I owned. I had a crappier car than her because I paid for it myself. She would remind me often how much better her car was. I paid for all my other expenses and bills. Then, this insane thing happens. She gets a job at the bank I have all of my accounts at. She freaking looks up my bank account to see how much money I have. She tells me this and criticizes that I only have X amount in the bank when she has triple X in the bank and is so much better than me at saving money. I never once in our whole relationship brought up the money issue or how she didn't really work for what she had. This time, though, I lost my fricking mind. I mentioned everything that she had that she didn't pay for, and explained that if it wasn't for her daddy, she would be a bolder $20,000 in debt. This blow-up was the biggest fight I've had in any relationship. Our relationship ended there. I learned a valuable lesson here. Always date someone who has a similar work ethic and financial goals as yourself. I realized that I always resented her and could admit I was jealous of her getting handed money. That's not right, nor is it healthy. I'm happily married to a very hard-working woman who will help me raise a hard-working child. Oh, don't worry, they'll tell you they're a princess. Was seeing a girl for a few months and I gave her something on Valentine's Day that read, "Be my Valentine," or some other variation. She responded with, "That's sweet, but my daddy will always be my Valentine." She was in her second semester of law school and in her mid-20s, so that whole daddy is the best man in the world thing was off-putting. She ended up being high maintenance and unpredictable. Bad combination. And of course, my most read story was about some daddy-obsessed girl I dated in the army. I'll let Jenna know that everyone else thinks it's strange too. I should mention that none of that unhealthy daddy attachment made its way into the bedroom. Thankfully, there was only one daddy in her life. I forgot to mention that she got married about a year ago and she did an entire album for her wedding shoot with her and her daddy. When she complains about her parents on the first date, going on about her lines of succession and how they're always forcing her to marry a prince from another fiefdom. And how she just wants the title but never even cleaned up after herself and makes her nasty stepsister do it all because she's pretty much an orphan now. Stepson had a girlfriend who was teed off because he didn't buy her a 1-week anniversary gift. Run, dude, run. To elaborate, they are pretty young, early teens. She didn't get him anything. This girl was nuts, would call him over and over. If he didn't answer, she would text him 8 million times. Luckily, he has since moved with me, new school and different city altogether, which is good because they dated like 4 times over the year. She would break up with him and then want him back. Well, to be fair, they're young and probably receive a little more of the princess treatment from their parents. Let's just hope they grow out of it, or into it in a healthy way. Senior year of high school prom was coming up, and this one girl who I kinda knew asked my friend if he would go to prom with her. He said yes, but a few days later changed his mind, which was 100% a prick thing to do. She, however, really wanted someone to go to prom with, and the guy that turned her down, along with some of my other mutual friends, told me I should go with her. which sounded like a good idea because she was kind of cute and I was going alone at that point. A week or so later, a few of us were hanging out at Nifty 50s and they gave us those little paper hat things and I wrote, "Prom?" on mine, and she said yes. Sick. On the way home from asking her out, she said to me, "How does it feel knowing that you're going to prom with the birthday princess?" First red flag. Upon further conversation, she told me that prom was going to be on her 18th birthday, and because of that, she was definitely going to get prom queen, which would most likely be the absolute last reason I'd want to get prom queen in her situation. Fast forward a week or so, I had just gotten home from school and I got a text from her asking if I wanted to go with her to pick out shoes for prom. I should tell you that halfway through my senior year, I moved to another school district 40-ish minutes away, and my date lived like 15 minutes on the other side of school. Not to mention that the car I drove was a gas-guzzling machine, and it was like $10 round trip when prices were high. I tried telling her that I had just gotten home, and that it would take me an hour or so to get there, and that I had work that I needed to get done. I also had zero interest in going, but that's beside the point. Reasonable excuse though. She lost it. She was saying all this stuff about how messed up it is that I wouldn't do this for her, and other random stuff that totally didn't make sense. Then she said, "I guess I'll just ask Anthony to go with me." Anthony was a close friend of mine who had off and on feelings for my date, and they were close friends. There was a reason he didn't ask her, but I can't remember. I told her to go ahead because that didn't bother me. I wasn't trying to date the girl. Hell, I wasn't even trying to get laid. I purely asked her out because she was dying to go to prom with someone, and I was single. Flash forward to day of prom. A few days before prom, she asked me if she should get a tan. I told her I really don't like that look, especially not awful spray tan. The day of prom, she showed up looking like a carrot and her hands looked like that of a black person. Her tan was bad. Uneven, blotchy, you name it. She was proud of it though, so who was I to tell her otherwise? She said, "How does the birthday princess look?" And I told her she looked beautiful. She told me at that time where to meet her and her friends who I was now taking, which was news to me, but I bit my tongue and went along with it. I get to her friend's house 5 minutes early, and she is 45 minutes late. When she finally arrives, she was wearing a tiara that read, "Birthday Princess." Her and her friend probably took 100 pics together, and me and the other dude, who I hated but by the end of the night found out he was actually pretty cool, just sat to the side waiting for our turn for the pics. I think we took 3 together. Now, when I tell people this part of the story, they get confused because apparently my school was weird. We had this thing called pre-prom, where basically we'd go up on stage in the auditorium, walked out with our date, get pictures taken, and get judged for prom king or queen. People do little cute things on stage in order to gain approval and to get more votes. Some funny, some cute, some just walked out like normal. What she made us do is she walks out on stage, first looking around. I creep up behind her with a huge happy birthday balloon, so everyone knew it was her birthday, tap her on the shoulder, and when she'd turn around, I'd be on one knee, put a sash on her that read, "Birthday Princess." It was cheesy, it was uncomfortable, I hated it. Prom time. So we get to prom and take our seat, we eat a little, and then people start going on the dance floor. I ask if she wants to dance, but she says she's not feeling well and I should just go. I obliged and danced for a good 20 minutes, and when I look at her sitting down, she looks very upset. I notice her staring at the boy who turned her down dancing with another girl, and I felt bad for her. I went up to her and told her to come to the floor and have fun with everyone, and she says she's fine. A half hour passes before I walk up to her, she looks me dead in the eyes, and before I can say anything, she snaps and says, "You really need to learn to leave me the hell alone." Well then. I leave her at the table and go and hang out with my friends. People keep coming up to me and asking where my date is, and then someone asks, "Why is she crying?" The question then turns to, "What did you do to her?" It got to the point where even teachers and school faculty pulled me over asking if I did anything to upset her. An hour passes and it's time to announce prom king and queen. I sat down again and she calmed down by this point. She was telling the whole table how she has to be prom queen because it's her birthday and she's the birthday princess. I told her not to get her hopes up just in case it didn't happen, and she didn't like that at all. She wasn't prom queen, she wasn't even nominated. She ran out of the room crying. After it was announced and people started dancing again, I went up to the aforementioned Anthony and told him if he wanted to dance with my date, he could. He told me he would feel bad and didn't want to do that to me, but I assured him it would be fine. I looked over a little later, noticed them slow dancing, and that was the happiest I'd been all night. I then went off to dance with some of the other girls who didn't have dates, and for once, prom was fun. Too bad it ended 20 minutes later. As everyone is gathering their things and clearing out, my date finds me again and says, "I feel like you're upset with me." I didn't say a word. She asked if we could go to Applebee's because it's her birthday and they love singing to her every year. First, I told her she wasn't special, they do that to everyone. That was a real slap in the face to her. Secondly, I told her by the time we got there, we would only have 15 minutes before it closed. She told me that as long as we order before it's closed, we can stay there. As someone who was working as a dishwasher at the time, I knew how much of a prick move that was. She said, "Please, but I'm the birthday princess." I refused. The drive home was one of the most uncomfortable car rides of my life. Every time we passed a restaurant, "Do you think Denny's would sing to me? Do you think the diner would sing to me? Do you think McDonald's would sing to me?" I have never met someone, yet alone an 18-year-old, who was so obsessed with their birthday. I pulled up to her other friend's house, a bunch of people were going here after prom to hang out, and we all got out. As I was walking up the driveway, I got the thought, what the hell am I doing? I walked back to my car and drove away. In conclusion, while she wanted to feel like a princess, I felt like 2017 Prince. Also, the day of prom at school, I asked my friend if he wanted to hang out after prom. He told me he wasn't going because he was going to ask out the girl I was going with and didn't want to go alone. Fast forward a few months. I hadn't spoken to the girl I went to prom with since I drove away. Literally not a word. It was the day of graduation and my one friend was having a graduation party. I went and lo and behold, my date was there. A group of us started talking and out of nowhere she said, "You know, the way you asked me to prom was cool, but the way that blank, the kid who didn't end up going to prom because I was going with her, would have asked me would have been so much better." His plan was going to be to get Snow White at Disney to ask this girl to prom because she was obsessed with Snow White. Like, she cried on senior trip at Disney when she saw her because she was so overwhelmed with excitement. Maybe the first red flag should have been that she was obsessed with princesses. Blimey. Listen, I think most of us came out there feeling a little less bad about our various cringe prom dates, and let's be thankful for that. I declined to send a selfie and got a B-word fit on the first day of our texting as I skipped work to feverishly sleep through the flu. "Honestly, I don't know if I can trust you. If you won't do such a simple thing, what if you abandon me in my hour of need in the airport or hospital?" I can only groan so hard. My friend's sister calls herself a princess. First of all, she's really picky about food and never eats anything gross, like chicken legs or wings. She once shed a fricking forced tear when she learned that the thing she was eating is chicken legs at the middle of the buffet. We were in a restaurant with my friend and she tags along. So when we asked her order, she just said that we should know her favorite foods since we have known her for so long. Not really. I just ordered her some burger meal and she threw a tantrum since she doesn't eat ketchup, and I should have known this. What the frick? We were in Burger King. She ended up clearing her whole meal straight to the floor and ordered salad. When she talks, she requires her boyfriend to pay her full attention. Looking away is not an option, or he would disrespect her. Goes for coffee with someone. "We should see a movie." "Sure thing. You're paying, right? I don't have any money." So I did. We walk past the snack bar and she goes and queues up. Slightly confused, I stand in line with her. She orders what she wants and then looks at me. I chuckle, place my ticket on the counter, and walk off and out of the cinema. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.